Chapter 39. At this moment, time seemed to freeze. Yi Xian's expression was grave, and cold sweat dripped down his forehead. The strength of the woman behind him had exceeded his expectations. If he had not turned around just now, he might have been able to fight against her. However, because he had turned around, he had lost the initiative and was now in a dilemma. After a moment of silence, the knife on his neck suddenly disappeared. Yi Xian immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Yi Xian did not leave. He turned around and saw that the woman had already put on her clothes. The woman was wearing a long black dress with mountains and rivers painted on it. She had a slender figure and a black sash was tied around her waist, accentuating her slender figure. Her eyes were like water, but they carried a faint coldness, as if they could see through everything. So beautiful. That was Yi Xian's first impression and feeling. When he thought of some of the scenes from before, Yi Xian immediately felt a little hot. Although he, Yi Xian, had never been close to a woman, it did not mean that he was not a man. He had everything that a normal man should have. The woman slowly walked in front of Yi Xian. She just looked at Yi Xian, causing Yi Xian's scalp to go numb. Yi Xian and the woman looked at each other, and in his eyes, there was only disgust. It was as if looking at a woman's body was a very shameful thing. The Jiang country was not very open-minded, and women were very concerned about their innocence. Yi Xian also knew this. The reason why he was like this was naturally because he wanted to avoid trouble. Moreover, this matter was mainly because he was in the wrong. However, he also felt very wronged. Only the heavens knew that there were other people here, and this woman was bathing in broad daylight. However, she was really beautiful. If he could look at her a few more times, he would not mind. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, he was shocked. Did he want to look at her a few more times? At this moment, the woman suddenly spoke. "Who are you?" Her voice was cold, and there was a trace of killing intent in her eyes. Yi Xian hurriedly collected his thoughts and said, "Yi Xian, new student." After saying this, he took a few steps back. It did not seem like he was trying to escape, but rather to get away from the woman. Moreover, there was a hint of disgust in his eyes. Noticing Yi Xian's actions, the woman frowned. "Am I that unsightly?" Yi Xian glanced at the woman and didn't say anything. However, he took 2 steps back. This was enough to explain everything. The woman sized up Yi Xian and shook her head. "You're a handsome man, but you're gay. How do men get along with men?" Yi Xian was speechless. Seeing that Yi Xian did not answer, the woman did not pursue the matter. She looked at Yi Xian with pity, then turned around and walked to her room. Seeing that the woman had left, Yi Xian instantly heaved a sigh of relief. This matter was over. Yi Xian hurriedly left the courtyard and found 2 rooms at the side. After cleaning the rooms, he went to the back mountain for a stroll. When he returned, he already had some game in his hands. Surviving in the wild was something that Yi Xian was very, very good at because he had once relied on hunting game to support himself and his sister. Yi Xian arrived at Kanglan Palace. At this moment, Yi Ling had already cleaned up the palace. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Ling hurriedly ran to Yi Xian and smiled sweetly. "Brother." Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. "Tired?" Yi Ling shook her head. "Not tired." Yi Xian smiled. "Clean up the tables at the side. Brother will go cook." Hearing this, Yi Ling's eyes lit up with anticipation. Cook. She loved eating Yi Xian's cooking the most, and it could be said that even the chefs of the Yi family couldn't compare to Yi Xian's cooking. An hour later, in Kanglan Palace, Yi Xian and his sister Yi Ling sat before a large shabby table. There were 4 or 5 appetizers on the table, and their fragrance assailed their nostrils. The siblings looked at each other and smiled. Just as they were about to pick up their chopsticks, a figure walked over from the side. It was the old man. The old man's entire body emitted an unpleasant smell of alcohol. His clothes seemed as if they hadn't been washed for many years, and his original appearance was unrecognizable. The old man didn't stand on ceremony and sat at the head of the table. He was just about to pick up his chopsticks when another person walked over from the side. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he saw who it was. It was the woman he'd met earlier. The woman sat on the old man's left. She glanced at the dishes on the table, and then looked at Yi Xian. "Did you cook for me?" Yi Xian. Yi Ling blinked. She glanced at Yi Xian, and then at the woman. The woman didn't say anything else. She picked up her chopsticks and picked up a small piece of mushroom. After a while, she nodded. "Not bad." Hearing this, the old man picked up a piece of mushroom and put it in his mouth. After chewing, he glanced at Yi Xian and nodded. "All right. From now on, Kanglin Academy's meals will be yours." The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. He wanted to beat someone up. At this moment, Yi Ling suddenly tilted her head and looked at the old man. "But my brother is a student." The old man glanced at Yi Ling. Cooking is also a form of cultivation. Yi Ling, Yi Xian couldn't stand it anymore. "Senior, Dean." The old man turned to look at Yi Xian. "Call me Dean, Dean Ji." Yi Xian nodded. "Dean Ji, for such a big academy, shouldn't we hire a few handymen?" The old man asked in return, "Are you paying?" Yi Xian was stunned for a while before saying, "Shouldn't you be paying?" Dean Ji shook his head. "I don't have money. I can't even afford to drink." Yi Xian, the woman didn't say anything. She just ate. She kept on eating. The speed at which she ate made Yi Xian and his sister dumbfounded. That speed was really abnormally fast. It was as if she hadn't eaten for more than 10 days. After a while, all the dishes on the table were swept clean. The woman licked her chopsticks. Then she turned to look at Yi Xian. "Is there anything else?" Yi Xian, Yi Ling put down her chopsticks. Then she said, "There's still something left. I'll go wash it." After saying that, she turned and ran to the back of the hall. Yi Xian asked in a low voice, "Is it safe here?" Old man Ji nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian hesitated. Then he asked again, "Dean Ji, since it's an academy, there's naturally a place to learn." "No." Old man Ji answered directly. "Self-study." Yi Xian, Martial Arts Hall. At this moment, the woman suddenly said. She was still licking her chopsticks. Old man Ji looked at Yi Xian. "There's a martial arts hall in the back mountain. There are some martial arts notes left by former students. As for martial arts techniques, if you're lucky, you might be able to find one or two." Sigh. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. "I'll go cook." After saying that, he turned and left. Next to the table, only the woman and the old man were left. The woman put down her chopsticks. "Where did you find it?" Old man Ji took a sip of wine and said, "I picked it up at Karaki Academy." The woman was silent for a moment. Then she asked again, "Why him?" The old man said, "He has potential." The woman said indifferently, "I alone am enough." The old man's hand trembled slightly. After a moment, he picked up the wine gourd and took a sip. Then he said softly, "Ji, you're carrying too much." The woman said indifferently, "This is my life and also my responsibility." After saying that, she turned to look outside the hall. Although they're dead, their souls are imprisoned in their bodies. As long as they're not brought back, they won't be able to rest in peace. And big brother, second brother. Father, the old man slowly closed his eyes. "You're the only bloodline of the Ji family." The woman chuckled. "Then I'm even more duty-bound." The old man shook his head. "Those two, in the country of Jiang, probably only in Lanxiao can suppress them." The woman stood up. "Where there's a will, there's a will." After saying that, she walked into the distance. When she reached the entrance of the hall, she suddenly stopped and said with a smile, "The worst outcome is just another corpse of Tsang Mountain's Xiao Dao." After saying that, she disappeared into the distance. Inside the hall, only the sound of the old man drinking wine could be heard. At night, after Yi Ling fell asleep, Yi Xian entered the World Prison Pagoda. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and asked, "Senior, am I a great swordsman?" "Yes," the mysterious woman answered. "Why?" Yi Xian was a little puzzled because he still hadn't been able to release sword light. The mysterious woman said, "What you're lacking now is only the realm. As long as you reach the qi-resisting realm and condense the qi in your body, with your current body foundation and your attainments in the sword, you can use sword qi at any time." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Then my battle intent, do you know martial arts?" The mysterious woman asked. Yi Xian shook his head. The mysterious woman said, "Your current situation is that you've comprehended battle intent in advance, but you haven't gone through the process of martial arts, so you're not a martial arts grandmaster at all. Moreover, to become a real martial arts grandmaster, you still need to materialize battle intent. The current you doesn't have that ability yet. What you need to do now is to accumulate the basic knowledge of martial arts. Of course, you can't slack off on your swordsmanship. Also, you can start looking for swords. Spiritual swords." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Where was he going to look for spiritual swords? Buy? He couldn't afford it. This was a big problem. After a while, Yi Xian began to cultivate. Apart from practicing his swordsmanship, he also practiced his fists and kicks. The only martial technique he knew was the collapsing fist. After adding the battle will, he discovered that the power of the collapsing fist had undergone a qualitative change. If he added battle intent, the collapsing fist would be at least lower mystic level. At this moment, he truly realized how terrifying battle intent was, and if he comprehended sword intent, then the might of the deciding life and death sword would probably be even more terrifying. The night passed, and Yi Xian suddenly rushed down the mountain at dawn the next day. Because old man Ji told him that a woman surnamed An was looking for him. In next to no time, Yi Xian arrived at the foot of the mountain, and Yi Xian saw a woman in white clothes that were spotless. She was breathtakingly beautiful. An Lanxiu. Yi Xian walked over to An Lanxiu and smiled, "Miss An." An Lanxiu nodded and was about to speak when a sloppy man walked over from nearby. The man carried a black iron rod on his back, and he walked unsteadily. When the man saw An Lanxiu, his eyes instantly lit up. "Beautiful, a beauty." Yi Xian suddenly stood in front of An Lanxiu and glanced at the man. "I'm pretty handsome too. You can watch for free." Chapter 40. An Lanxiu, who stood behind Yi Xian, glanced at Yi Xian and didn't speak. On the other hand, the man who stood before Yi Xian sized up Yi Xian and said, "Kid, it looks to me like you're asking for a beating." As soon as he finished speaking, the man suddenly smashed his iron rod towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian clenched his right fist tightly, and battle intent condensed on his fist. He punched. Hiss. The sound of an explosion suddenly rang out. Bang! Along with this explosion, the man was pushed over 10 m back along with his iron rod, and his pitch-black iron rod was trembling violently. On the other hand, Yi Xian had moved over 3 m back as well, and his right hand was trembling slightly. The man who stood before Yi Xian glanced at his iron rod, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. "You have some ability." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly tossed his iron rod towards Yi Xian. Hiss! A sharp whistle resounded through the air. Yi Xian's face was emotionless. When the iron rod arrived before him, he suddenly smashed his right fist forward. It was just a simple punch. Fist crush. A single punch could shatter metal and shatter rocks. Bang! The iron rod shook violently and was blasted flying back. However, right at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and in the blink of an eye, a strand of cold light shot towards Yi Xian's throat. Danger. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. This was his first feeling, and he didn't dare conceal it any longer. He twisted his right hand lightly. A low and heavy sword howl resounded, and in the blink of an eye. Bang! A silhouette was forced to retreat over 100 feet. It was that man. After the man stopped moving, he gazed at Yi Xian with astonishment. Swordsman. You're actually a swordsman. Yi Xian glanced at the man. Do you still want to fight me? The man chuckled. Yes, of course. When have I, Mo Yinchi, ever feared anyone in my lifetime? Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him. In the next moment, a cold light flashed. The man called Mo Yinchi's expression changed greatly. You didn't even say anything before starting the fight. As he spoke, he swung the iron rod in his hand upwards. Hard, hard, hard. Bang! An ear-piercing sound of metal clashing rang out, and in the blink of an eye, Mo Yinchi's entire body was pushed back a distance of over 100 feet. This time, Yi Xian didn't attack again. Instead, he retreated to Enlanxio's side and glanced at her. I forgot myself. Enlan smiled without saying a word. Yi Xian's expression was rather unnatural, or rather, slightly embarrassed. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly looked towards the nearby Mo Yinchi and said, let's continue fighting. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged out. Mo Yinchi, Enlanxio glanced at the distant Yi Xian. It was unknown what she was thinking. After around 10 minutes passed, a voice suddenly resounded, that's enough. It was Old Man Ji's voice. As soon as this voice resounded, Old Man Ji appeared not too far away from Enlanxio. He nodded slightly to her, and then he gazed at Yi Xian and Mo Yinchi. However, they didn't stop. Old Man Ji suddenly gazed at Enlanxio. Guoshuren, do you really care about him? Of course, he was referring to Yi Xian. Enlanxio lightly combed her hair behind her ear. Yes. Old Man Ji's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard this. Guoshuren, do you know what you're talking about? Enlanxio chuckled lightly. Just because he dared to stand before a few thousand troops of the Tang Empire, he's qualified to be my friend. Of course, we're friends now. Friend. Old Man Ji sighed lightly. In the entire kingdom of Jiang, there were probably less than a handful of people who were qualified to be friends with this little girl. Bang! Meanwhile, an explosion suddenly resounded from afar, and then Mo Yinchi was blasted over 30 m away. Yi Xian didn't attack again, and he retreated to Enlanxio's side instead. Mo Yinchi glanced at Yi Xian and Enlanxio, and he didn't attack as well. Old Man Ji glanced at Mo Yinchi. Both of you are students of Tsanglan Academy from now on. Both Yi Xian and Mo Yinchi were stunned. Students of Tsanglan Academy? Mo Yinchi pointed at Yi Xian. He's a student of Tsanglan Academy as well? Old Man Ji spoke indifferently. What? Is there a problem? Mo Yinchi glanced at Old Man Ji. Old man, how many students are there in our Tsanglan Academy? Old Man Ji said, there's a total of 3 including you. However, there's another one coming soon. By then, there'll be 4. 4. Mo Yinchi was dumbstruck, and he turned around and left quite some time later. I'm going to Karaki Academy. Old Man Ji glanced at Mo Yinchi. Do you not want the second half of sweeping staff technique? In the distance, Mo Yinchi stopped, and he turned around to look at Old Man Ji. Old man, great-grandpa, one academy, for students, are you sure this academy has a future? Old Man Ji said indifferently, you've already signed the application form for Tsanglan Academy. Even if you go to Karaki Academy now, they won't want you. Hearing this, Mo Yinchi pointed at Old Man Ji angrily. Old man, you're tricking me. Old Man Ji shrugged. I didn't force you back then. You were the one who begged me to let you join Tsanglan Academy. Hearing this, Mo Yinchi was so angry that he almost vomited blood. You still have the nerve to say that? You said that Sanglan Academy is about the same as Karaki Academy. It's about the same. Old Man Ji said, they're both in the imperial capital, they're both academies. Is there a problem? Mo Yunchi was so angry that he almost breathed his last. This is what you call about the same? This is the difference between heaven and earth. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't win, he probably would have fought. At this moment, Old Man Ji flicked his finger, and a black scroll fell in front of Mo Yunchi. Mo Yunchi glanced at it, and in the next moment, his eyes lit up, and he hurriedly put the scroll away. Old Man Ji pointed at the top of the mountain. Mo Yunchi was a little conflicted, and he glanced at the scroll in his hand. In the end, he sighed deeply, and then walked towards the top of the mountain reluctantly. However, when he passed by Yi Xian and Enlanxiu, he suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Let's fight after I finish practicing this second half. Yi Xian shrugged. Anytime. Fight? He liked it too. Not far away, Old Man Ji suddenly said, Kid, this is the imperial capital, you'd better keep a low profile. Mo Yunchi snorted coldly. Low profile? Old man, I'm so outstanding, do I need to keep a low profile? I'm not boasting, but in the entire imperial capital, is there anyone more outstanding than me? When he spoke up to hear, he glanced at the sky and spoke heroically. Isn't the number one genius of our Jiang kingdom that Enlanxiu? That was in the past. Now that I, Mo Yunchi, have risen, Enlanxiu is nothing. Just you wait, I'll beat her until she cries. Yi Xian had a rather strange expression on his face. Old Man Ji shook his head. It's the first time I've seen someone court death like this. Mo Yunchi was just about to speak when a white afterimage suddenly appeared behind him. Mo Yunchi's expression changed drastically, and he swiftly turned around before smashing the iron rod in his hand down. Bang! Along with an explosion, Mo Yunchi's figure was blasted flying. In the next moment, the ground trembled violently, and then a strange scene appeared. A figure was smashing the ground incessantly while howling incessantly. Just like that, this continued for an entire 15 minutes before the figure finally stopped. It was Mo Yunchi. At this moment, Mo Yunchi was lying on the ground like a pile of mud, and his entire face was swollen like a pig's head. Enlanxiu gazed at Yi Xian. Accompany me for a walk? Brother Yi grinned. All right. The two of them walked side by side towards the nearby Xiao Dao. Mo Yunchi roared furiously from behind them. Just you wait. Just you wait. If I don't avenge her, then She's Enlanxiu. Old Man Ji had suddenly appeared by Mo Yunchi's side. Mo Yunchi's voice stopped abruptly, and then his head tilted to the side in the blink of an eye. Old Man Ji kicked Mo Yunchi. Don't play dead. Get up and continue roaring. What's Enlanxiu? Beat her until she cries. Mo Yunchi didn't move at all. Old Man Ji didn't say anything else. He just pulled Mo Yunchi's leg up, and then he dragged Mo Yunchi up the mountain. On a certain Xiao Dao, Yi Xian and Enlanxiu were walking side by side. Enlanxiu spoke in a light voice. I never expected that you would join Sanglan Academy. Yi Xian fell silent. He also didn't expect that he would join Sanglan Academy by a freak combination of factors. It could only be said that the affairs of the world were unpredictable. Enlanxiu suddenly stopped. I'm leaving the state of Jiang. I'm here to bid farewell today. Leave the state of Jiang. Yi Xian turned to look at Enlanxiu. Enlanxiu looked straight at Yi Xian. I'm worried about you. Yi Xian shook his head. I don't understand. Enlanxiu took a step forward. At this moment, she was very close to Yi Xian. Yi Xian could already clearly smell the faint fragrance from Enlanxiu's body. Enlanxiu looked straight at Yi Xian. Everyone has underestimated you. I might even have underestimated you. I don't know what kind of fortuitous encounter you had, nor do I know what your true trump card is. However, you make me feel a trace of danger. Saying that, she shook her head and smiled. In the entire state of Jiang, there are very few people who can make me feel a sense of danger. Moreover, this kind of danger is not the kind of danger under normal circumstances. Yi Xian fell silent. And Lanxiu continued to walk forward while Yi Xian followed slowly. After a while, Lanxiu said softly, "After I leave, there might not be anyone in the state of Jiang who can truly suppress you in the future. Moreover, your character is too impulsive and straightforward. I'm afraid that one day, the imperial capital will fall into chaos because of you." Saying that, she turned to look at Yi Xian. "Promise me one thing. After I leave, if it's within your ability, take care of the state of Jiang." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "You might be thinking too highly of me." And Lanxiu smiled lightly. "You still haven't answered me." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "I promise you that in the future, I will do my best to help the state of Jiang." "Do you know what I like about you?" And Lanxiu suddenly asked. "Like me?" Yi Xian was stunned, and his mind went blank. And Lanxiu was also slightly stunned. She knew that she seemed to have misspoken. However, she didn't explain anything and only smiled before continuing to walk into the distance. Yi Xian was in a daze for a moment. Then he followed her slowly. For a time, the two of them didn't speak and just walked like that. After a while, Lanxiu stopped and took out a black jade pendant and handed it to Yi Xian. "This is?" Yi Xian was puzzled. And Lanxiu said softly, "In the north of the state of Jiang, which is also the location of Two World City, the forces on the mountain discovered a ruin left behind by a sword master. They've almost developed it, and they'll be able to enter it in a month at most. This is a certificate of qualification given to me by the higher-ups. With this jade pendant, I'm qualified to enter the ruin. To me, entering it doesn't have any special meaning. You're a swordsman, so it should be of great help to you. Moreover, that place is located in a volcanic area, and there might be something extremely hot underground. If you can obtain it, it should be of great help to your sister. However, you have to be careful. Besides the top 1 or 2 people from the state of Jiang, there will be some top geniuses from other countries going there as well. You can't underestimate them." Yi Xian pondered for a moment before he accepted the jade pendant. And Lanxiu smiled lightly. "Farewell." She walked into the distance after she finished speaking. "Will we meet again?" Yi Xian suddenly asked. And Lanxiu stopped. "My footsteps might be very fast." Yi Xian grinned. "I'll surpass you." And Lanxiu turned to glance at Yi Xian and smiled. "Good luck." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned and disappeared at the end of the Xiaodao. Yi Xian looked at the beautiful figure in the distance for a long time before he returned to his senses. He flipped his left palm, and in it was the other jade pendant Lanxiu gave him. 2 jade pendants. Looking at the 2 jade pendants, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. This smile was a little silly. Since he was young, he and his sister depended on each other for survival. There were very few people who treated him well. Even if there were people who treated him well, they were mostly using him. But Lanxiu was different. Yi Xian would never forget someone who treated him well for the rest of his life. A moment later, Yi Xian tightly grasped the 2 jade pendants, turned around and walked up the mountain. He kept smiling, a silly smile. P.S. Friends who haven't collected this book, please add it to your bookshelf. Thank you very much to some friends who went to other book review sections to promote this book, and pulled in many readers for this book. Thank you. Also thank you very much to the readers who have been tipping these 2 days. Touched. Thank you very much. Love you all. Chapter 41. Love? Yi Xian didn't know what love was, and he'd never loved in the past. All he knew was that he really liked being with Lanxiu. As for anything else, he'd never thought about it. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped moving because an old man was standing not too far away from him. It was Elder Ling who'd followed Lanxiu earlier. Yi Xian glanced at the old man but didn't say anything. Elder Ling sized up Yi Xian, and then he said in a low voice, "Old man Ling Xiu, one of the young Miss servants. Missin? Asked Yi Xian. Elder Ling nodded. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Is something the matter, senior? Elder Ling said in a low voice, Young Master Yi, what I'm about to say might offend you in any way. I hope you can forgive me. Yi Xian nodded. Go ahead. Elder Ling said, even though the young miss is from the state of Jiang, you should be able to tell that her background isn't simple. To put it bluntly, the people she meets in the state of Jiang might only be able to look up to her in the future, and they might not even have the qualifications to look up to her. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian nodded. You're trying to tell me not to get close to her, right? Elder Ling nodded. I presume young Master Yi is extraordinary since the young miss thinks so highly of him. However, the young miss isn't just an incomparably monstrous genius. The power behind her is something that young Master Yi can't even imagine. If young Master Yi has any other thoughts about the young miss, then forgive me for being blunt, but young Master Yi might live a very, very tiring life, or even very, very miserable life, and the young miss might be implicated because of you. Yi Xian fell silent. Elder Ling glanced at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, please think about what I'm saying. Farewell. As soon as he finished speaking, the space in front of him suddenly split open, and in the next moment, Elder Ling entered the spatial rift and vanished. Splitting open space. Only those who had reached the nether passage realm were capable of such a feat. Above the chi-resisting realm was the ascending realm, and above the ascending realm was the nether passage realm. The other party was several realms higher than him, and this nether passage realm expert was just a servant. The other party was purposely displaying his strength in front of him. His intentions were very clear. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian slowly walked up the mountain. Feeling pressured? The mysterious woman suddenly asked. Yi Xian nodded. The mysterious woman continued, the fire spirit within your younger sister can only last for a month at most. If you can't find a replacement in a month, then she'll be in great danger. Apart from that, the guy imprisoned on the second floor should be waking up soon. Once it awakens and you haven't found the Tao Law, you'll definitely die. If you die, your sister's fate might be even worse. Yi Xian took a deep breath. I want to cultivate. I want to become stronger. With that, he quickened his pace. Becoming stronger was for his sister, for himself, for survival, and for the sake of pursuing what he wanted to pursue. It was like how people in the secular world couldn't talk about love without money. How could they talk about living comfortably? Many relationships were built on the foundation of money. Even though it wasn't absolute, most relationships were like that. In next to no time, Yi Xian returned to the storm hall, and his expression instantly changed when he arrived before it. In the distance, Yi Ling sat on the ground and cried incessantly. Mo Yunqi, who had a bloody nose and swollen face, was by Yi Ling's side. At this moment, Mo Yunqi was gesturing to Yi Ling while Yi Ling cried even more fiercely. Yi Xian's expression instantly turned ferocious when he saw this. How dare you bully my sister? As soon as he finished speaking, a sword silently condensed in his palm. In the next moment, a powerful pressure accompanied by a faint glow of the sword swept out from his body, and the weeds in front of him were instantly slashed apart by this imposing aura and glow of the sword. One sword to decide life and death. Mo Yunqi was dumbfounded when he saw Yi Xian suddenly going berserk. He was about to speak, but Yi Xian had already rushed towards him with the sword in hand. Mo Yunqi was horrified when he sensed the power of Yi Xian's sword. He didn't dare to take it head-on, so he hurriedly leaped over the wall to escape. However, as soon as he leaped over the wall, it was directly turned into powder. F***ck. Mo Yunqi's face twitched when he saw the wall behind him turn into powder. He hurriedly sped up and ran into the distance. Behind him, Yi Xian madly chased after him. Everywhere Yi Xian passed, there was a mess. In the main hall, seeing Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi disappear not far away, Yi Ling was stunned, and then she hurriedly ran over. When she ran outside the wall, Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi had already disappeared into the distance. She could only vaguely hear Mo Yinchi's panicked voice. Big brother. I didn't bully your sister, calm down. However, Mo Yinchi's voice was soon drowned out by the sound of the sword. Yi Ling was stunned. What if Big Brother hurts himself? After saying that, she hurriedly ran to Old Man Ji's courtyard. In the courtyard, Old Man Ji was lying on a recliner, with a wine gourd in his mouth, sleeping soundly. Yi Ling hugged Old Man Ji's arm and shook it vigorously, saying anxiously, Grandpa Ji, Big Brother is fighting with that guy. Quickly go and take a look. Old Man Ji did not move at all. He was drunk like a puddle of mud. Yi Ling had no choice but to run to Ji Anji's courtyard. Ji Anji glanced at Yi Ling, and Yi Ling's face was full of anxiety. Big sister Ji, Big Brother is fighting with that person. Do you want to persuade him? I'm afraid Big Brother will hurt himself. Ji Anji walked in front of Yi Ling. Do you know how to cook? Yi Ling nodded subconsciously. Ji Anji said, I'm hungry. Yi Ling. Behind the Kanglan Palace, other than a large number of abandoned buildings, there was a mountain range. At this moment, two figures were running wildly in a dense forest in this mountain range. The one in the lead was Mo Yinchi. Above his feet, there were two whirlwinds. With the support of these two whirlwinds, his speed was like a gust of wind, extremely fast. And behind him, there was Yi Xian holding the Ling Shao sword in his hand. At this moment, Yi Xian's body was filled with a ruthless aura. Everywhere he passed, the flowers, plants, and trees were basically cut down. After running for about an hour, Mo Yinchi chose to fight with Yi Xian head-on. However, when Yi Xian used one sword decides life and death, he decisively chose to escape. This was because his iron rod, before it could even get close to Yi Xian's sword, it was directly cut into pieces by Yi Xian's Ling Shao sword light. It was directly cut into pieces. He could not fight. Mo Yinchi ran madly into the depths of the forest, and behind him, Yi Xian chased closely. Just like that, one person ran, the other chased, from night to dawn. At dawn, Missouri Yinchi ran back to the front of the Kanglan Palace. As soon as he stopped, Yi Xian appeared behind him. Yi Xian was about to make a move, but Yi Ling, who had been waiting in front of the stone steps all night, hurriedly ran over and hugged Yi Xian. Brother, are you okay? He didn't hurt you, right? Not far away, Mo Yinchi, who was lying on the ground and gasping for breath, heard Yi Ling's words, and he was so angry that he almost breathed his last. At this moment, when he saw Yi Ling, Yi Xian also became slightly more normal. He gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. Are you okay? Yi Ling hurriedly shook his head. I'm fine. Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yinchi, who was lying on the ground not far away. The latter's expression changed greatly, and he was extremely vigilant. You, don't mess around. I didn't bully your sister. You ask her yourself. Yi Xian withdrew his gaze, and he looked at Yi Ling. What happened before? Yi Ling slightly lowered her head, and did not speak. What happened? Yi Xian asked softly. Yi Ling softly said, I just remembered the time when I was with brother in the Yi family. At that time, brother picked up a bun, and he could not bear to eat it, so he gave it to me. Because of this, brother almost starved to death. As she spoke, tears began to flow down her cheeks. Yi Xian gently hugged Yi Ling. Silly girl, the past is the past. Brother will definitely not let you suffer in the future. Yi Ling hugged Yi Xian tightly. Brother can't suffer too much, okay? Yi Xian grinned. Okay, let's try our best to live a good life in the future, okay? Yi Ling raised her head, looked at Yi Xian, and smiled through her tears. Okay. Soon, Yi Ling fell asleep in Yi Xian's arms. After Yi Xian carried Yi Ling back to the room, he came to the front of the Kanglan Palace, and sat not far away from Mo Yinchi. Mo Yinchi had a vigilant look on his face. Yi Xian took out a wine gourd, and threw it to Mo Yinchi. Sorry. Mo Yinchi glanced at Yi Xian, picked up the wine gourd, and took a big gulp, and then said, "What's the name of the sword technique you used just now?" "One sword to decide life and death," Yi Xian replied. Mo Yunqi nodded, "Very strong, I couldn't block it." Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yunqi. "There were 2 whirlwinds under your feet, was that a martial technique?" Mo Yunqi nodded, 10,000 miles wind chasing technique, mystic lower grade. As he spoke, he laid down on the stone steps. "If it wasn't for this martial technique, I would have been killed by your sword just now." Yi Xian also laid down on the stone steps. He held his head with both hands, and looked at the distant horizon. "Sorry." Mo Yunqi shook his head, "It's also my fault. I saw your sister crying, so I teased her, and said that you were beaten up by me, so she cried even harder." Yi Xian. At this moment, at the end of their sight, a bald man was walking towards them. The man was about 18 or 19 years old, bald, and extremely burly. He was bigger than Mo Yunqi and Yi Xian, and he didn't wear any clothes on his upper body, and his muscles were bulging, looking quite terrifying. There were some bones hanging on the man's neck, and some of the bones were still stained with blood. Mo Yunqi said softly, "This guy should be our other student." As he spoke, he turned to look at Yi Xian. "Beat him up?" Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, "You first?" Mo Yunqi shrugged, "Let's go." As he spoke, he tapped his right foot lightly, and his whole body directly floated out, extremely elegant, and extremely fast. This speed made Yi Xian feel ashamed of his inferiority. Very quickly, Mo Yunqi appeared in front of the bald man, and he directly swept his foot towards the bald man's shoulder. The bald man didn't dodge, nor did he dodge. Bang! As a muffled sound rang out, Mo Yunqi was directly pushed back several feet, and his right foot was unceasingly trembling, while the bald man didn't move at all. The bald man looked at Mo Yunqi with an unfriendly expression. Mo Yunqi's expression changed slightly, and he turned to look at Yi Xian, who was not far away. "Let's go together." Yi Xian walked in front of the bald man, and the bald man was somewhat on guard, but at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly cupped his fists. "Zhanglan Academy, welcome." Mo Yunqi looked at Yi Xian in shock. "You," the bald man cupped his fists towards Yi Xian, "Thank you." As he spoke, he turned to look at Mo Yunqi, who was not far away. Mo Yunqi smiled awkwardly. "It's a misunderstanding, a complete misunderstanding." The bald man suddenly rushed towards Mo Yunqi, and Mo Yunqi's expression changed greatly, and he turned to run. "Yi Xian, you bastard, you sold me out." Chapter 42. Soon, Mo Yunqi's wails could be heard from the mountain. Noon, inside the Azure Wave Palace. Old Man Ji sat at the head of the table. He drank wine from time to time and was still drunk. On his left was Ji, who held a pair of chopsticks and slowly licked them. On Old Man Ji's right was the bald man. The bald man held a string of iron beads in his hand. The iron beads were very smooth and shone with a faint light. Obviously, they were not made of ordinary materials. Below the bald man was Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi looked really miserable. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen. There were many footprints on his body. And the bald man sitting not far from him looked at him from time to time with an unfriendly expression. At this moment, a fragrant smell wafted over. Old Man Ji opened his eyes. Ji immediately sat up straight and held the long chopsticks in his hand, ready to go. Yi Xian and Yi Ling each carried a plate over. Yi Xian carried a plate of roasted chicken. It was golden yellow and looked very tempting. Yi Ling carried a steamed fish. It looked very appetizing. The siblings had just placed the plate on the table when Old Man Ji and Ji started eating. The speed was so fast that it shocked the bald man and Mo Yunqi. Not to mention them, even Yi Xian and Yi Ling were stunned. Old Man Ji was fine, but Ji's eating speed could be described as a bandit. In less than 10 breaths, the roasted chicken in front of Ji was only left with the bones and the fish was only left with the bones. The bald man and Mo Yunqi at the side were dumbfounded, and they had just picked up their chopsticks. Old man Ji glanced at Ji Anji. Be more reserved. Ji Anji licked his chopsticks and looked at Yi Xian. Is there more? Everyone, after a long time, the Azure Wave Palace quietened down. Everyone sat around the table. There were 7 or 8 plates on the table, all clean. The bald man and Mo Yunqi looked like they had nothing left to live for, because they had only eaten a few mouthfuls. Yi Xian and his sister, Yi Ling, looked at each other and smiled. They were already full when they were in the kitchen. At this time, old man Ji suddenly said, "Let me introduce you to the newcomer." As he spoke, he pointed at the bald man. Bai Zhe, from Mount Mang in the north. He has a half-demon body. The bald man called Bai Zhe stood up and bowed slightly to the crowd. However, he cast an unfriendly glance at Mo Yunqi. The corners of Mo Yunqi's mouth twitched, and he glared fiercely at Yi Xian, who was not far away. Yi Xian was speechless. At this time, old man Ji pointed at Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi comes from Mo town at the border of the extreme south. He has a light and agile physique, and if he cultivates speed-type martial techniques, he will be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. He is good at using sticks and throwing knives. Flying daggers. Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yunqi. This guy was hiding something. Mo Yunqi suddenly pointed at Yi Xian. Old man, tell me about him. Old man Ji glanced at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, from Qingqingzi family. He is a swordsman. Great swordsman. Great swordsman. Ji Anji and the bald man glanced at Yi Xian, and there was a trace of surprise and curiosity in their eyes. Great swordsman. This was rare in the entire country of Jiang, especially for such a young great swordsman. Yi Xian, at this time, Mo Yunqi suddenly stood up. He looked at Yi Xian in shock. Big brother, you can't be that trash that Karaki Academy doesn't want, right? You're the trash. Yi Ling suddenly glared at Mo Yunqi. I won't cook for you in the future. At the side, Bai Zhe nodded. Don't let him eat. Mo Yunqi's face twitched. He gently fanned his cheeks and smiled. Little sister, I misspoke. Don't be angry, he finally understood. In this Tsanglan Academy, only this pair of siblings knew how to cook. If they didn't cook, he could only eat grass in the future. Yi Ling coldly snorted and didn't say anything. Old man Ji suddenly said. He is the Yi Xian from the imperial capital. The Yi Xian from the imperial capital. Under Karaki Academy's deliberate propaganda, Yi Xian's reputation in the imperial capital was very big. Of course, it wasn't a good reputation. Mo Yunqi sized up Yi Xian and shook his head. TSK, Karaki Academy is really awesome. They don't even want someone like you. Since when did Karaki Academy have such high requirements? Yi Xian smiled and didn't say anything. Old man Ji suddenly said. In the back mountain, there is a martial arts hall. It used to be a place for Tsanglan Academy students to study. You can go there and have a look. Maybe you will gain something. Do you have martial arts? Mo Yunqi quickly asked. Cultivation methods are fine too. Old man Ji shook his head. Why? Mo Yunqi was puzzled. Old man Ji said calmly. I sold them for wine money. Everyone, old man Ji stood up. 1.5 years. There is still 1.5 years until the triennial death match between Tsanglan Academy and Karaki Academy. I don't want your corpses to be hung on Tsang Mountain's Xiaodao in 1.5 years. Also, don't go out and wander around. If Karaki Academy students see you, they will definitely beat you up. After saying that, he turned and left. Ji Anji suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. Go and make something to eat. Yi Xian, an hour later, after Yi Anji had eaten her fill, she stood up. Let me give you a friendly reminder. Kuraki Academy has two peerless geniuses, one male and one female. The male is called Fenju and the female is called Bei Chen. These two are not even 20 years old, but they have already reached the Ascendant Realm. They might even be half a step into the ethereal opening realm. Let me put it this way. In the entire country of Jiang, there is only one person who can suppress them. You should know who this person is. The few people present naturally knew who this person was. Besides Enlanxiu, who else could it be? Ji Anji said again. Besides these two, there are three other geniuses under them. The identities of these three people are unknown. We only know that each of them has a special ability. Rumor has it that if the three of them join forces, they can even fight against Enlanxiu. At this time, Mo Yinchi raised his right hand and said weakly, is it too late to quit now? Ji Anji glanced at Mo Yinchi. It's not too late to commit suicide now. Sigh. Mo Yinchi laid on the table and sighed deeply. I've been screwed over by this geezer. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, since everyone is here, I have something to discuss with all of you. Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, I looked it up earlier. Our academy lacks a lot of daily necessities. For example, we don't even have normal necessities. There are also some other things like toilet paper. In short, we lack everything. Oh my God. Mo Yinchi howled with grief while his head lay on the table, and he had a helpless expression on his face. Yi Xian glanced at them. I've decided to go down the mountain to buy some daily necessities. However, I don't have enough money. All of you should contribute some as well. Let's pool our resources together. Everyone was speechless. When he saw Ji Anji and the others remain silent, Yi Xian shrugged. It's fine if all of you don't contribute. We'll live our own lives from now on. That's fine, right? The corners of Mo Yinchi and the others' mouths twitched. Live our own lives? Eat grass in the future? A moment later, Bei Zhe took out a bag and handed it to Yi Xian. 20 gold coins. Yi Xian didn't stand on ceremony and kept it. Then, he looked at Ji Anji. The latter just stared at Yi Xian, causing Yi Xian's scalp to go numb. A moment later, Yi Xian waved his hand. All right. You don't need to contribute anymore. Go do what you need to do. Ji Anji turned around and left without any hesitation. Yi Xian turned to look at Mo Yinchi. Just like Ji Anji, Mo Yinchi also looked at him. Just like that. Yi Xian suddenly slammed the table and shouted angrily, what are you looking at? Hurry up and pay up. Otherwise, eat grass. Mo Yinchi was speechless. An hour later, Yi Xian brought his sister down the mountain. To their left and right were Mo Yinchi and Bei Zhe. They had bought quite a lot of things this time. He and his sister, Yi Ling, definitely couldn't bring so many things, so he dragged Mo Yinchi and Bei Zhe along. Along the way, Yi Ling was lively and very happy. Looking at Yi Ling, Yi Xian's eyes were slightly worried, because the fire spirit had temporarily suppressed the coldness in Yi Ling's body. The fire spirit could last for 2 or 3 months at most. If there was no new replacement after 2 or 3 months, thinking up to there, he took out the black jade pendant Enlanxiu had given him. The 2 world mountains, the sword master's dwelling. I have to go myself. Yi Xian said softly. On Yi Xian's left, Mo Yinchi had a weed in his mouth and was humming an unknown tune. He seemed rather sloppy. On Yi Xian's right, Bei Zhe walked with his head lowered. He was very silent, or rather, he basically didn't speak at all. At this moment, Mo Yinchi suddenly said, speaking of which, are the 2 of you confident in a year and a half? Yi Xian patted Mo Yinchi's shoulder gently, what's there to be afraid of? Just do it. Mo Yinchi gave Yi Xian a thumbs up, big brother, you make it sound so easy. The problem is, can we win? If we can't, we'll be killed and our corpses will be hung on Sung Mountain's Shao Dao. Yi Xian spread his hands. You don't want to do it? Then what should we do? Kneel and beg for mercy at Kuraki Academy? Mo Yinchi sighed softly. It's all my fault for being blinded by greed and believing old man Ji's words. I was tricked here by him. Sigh, it's all tears. At this point, he seemed to have thought of something, and he turned to look at Bei Zhe. Big guy, how did you get tricked here? Yi Xian also looked at Bei Zhe. He really wanted to know how Bei Zhe got tricked here. Under normal circumstances, no one would be willing to come here. Bei Zhe hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Old man Ji said that my bones are amazing, that I'm naturally intelligent, and that I'm a 1 in a million martial arts prodigy. He said that the peace of the state of Jiang will depend on me in the future. Yi Xian and Mo Yinchi were stunned on the spot. After a moment, Mo Yinchi gulped, and then he said, You believe him? Bei Zhe glanced at Yi Xian and nodded, I believe him. Yi Xian. Chapter 43. Hearing Bei Zhe's words, Yi Xian shook his head. In this world, there were actually such naive people. Mo Yinchi, on the other hand, looked at Bei Zhe with pity and shook his head. At this moment, Bei Zhe suddenly asked, Am I not a martial arts prodigy? Yi Xian and Mo Yinchi looked at each other, and the two of them walked away quickly. Behind them, Bei Zhe touched his bald head and was a little confused. Soon, Yi Xian and the others entered the bustling streets of the imperial capital. Because he had the VIP card of the Drunken Immortal restaurant, Yi Xian went straight to the Drunken Immortal restaurant. If he did not take advantage of the situation, he would be a bastard. Soon, the three of them arrived at the busiest area in the center of the city. There was a tall building here with a total of 9 floors. It was extremely luxurious. This building was the famous Drunken Immortal restaurant in Qingzhou. Yi Xian walked in with the 2 coolies, Yi Ling and Mo Yinchi. Soon, a delicate and pretty woman came to greet them. The delicate and pretty woman bowed slightly to them. Is there anything you need? Yi Xian took out his VIP card. When she saw the VIP card, the delicate and pretty woman's face suddenly changed. She bowed deeply again. Distinguished guest, please follow me. Soon, under the lead of the delicate and pretty woman, the 4 of them arrived at a very luxurious private room. As soon as they sat down, someone immediately served good spiritual tea. Before long, an old man walked in. After the old man entered, he bowed slightly to Yi Xian and the others. Finally, he looked at Yi Xian. How should I address you, distinguished guest? Yi Xian said, Yi Xian. Yi Xian. The old man was slightly struck dumb when he had heard that. He sized Yi Xian up and down. Soon, he was sure. The person in front of him should be Yi Xian, whose name had spread like wildfire in the imperial city. The old man's expression was natural. What instructions does young Master Yi have? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, Give me 300 caddies of rice, 50 chickens, 50 ducks, 10 pigs, 10 cows, and 5 barrels of oil. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. The old man in front of Yi Xian was also dumbfounded. Mo Yinchi, who was not far away, sat in the corner and looked at the ceiling as if he didn't know Yi Xian. Bei Zhe's expression was also extremely unnatural. Coming to a place like the Drunken Immortal restaurant to buy these? Who had ever seen anyone come to the Drunken Immortal restaurant to buy rice and oil? After a while, Yi Xian finally finished speaking. However, as if he thought of something, he added, Discount, remember to give me a discount. 50% off. The old man, seeing the old man's expression, Yi Xian frowned. What, you're not selling? The old man smiled bitterly. Young Master Yi, it's not that we don't want to sell, but we don't have these, Yi Xian said indifferently. The person who gave me the card said that if I need anything in the future, I can come to the Drunken Immortal restaurant. As long as my request is not too excessive, the Drunken Immortal restaurant can satisfy it. Alas, it seems that he was bragging to me. Hearing this, the old man's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly bowed deeply. Young Master Yi, please wait a moment. Although we don't have these items in the Drunken Immortal restaurant, there are many of them outside. This old man will immediately prepare them for young Master Yi. Please wait a moment, young Master Yi. Yi Xian nodded. Then I'll have to trouble you. The old man bowed, then turned around and left. In the room, only Yi Xian's group of 4 were left. At this moment, Mo Yinchi suddenly said, "This is a purple card. Among the many VIP cards in the Drunken Immortal restaurant, it's only inferior to the black card. You're not simple." Yi Xian smiled and said, "It's just a card." Mo Yinchi shook his head. "Big brother, a place like the Drunken Immortal restaurant can be said to be the most luxurious and honorable place in the imperial capital. You came to this place to buy meat, rice, oil, and salt. You're really shameless." Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yinchi lightly. "If we don't come to this place and go outside, do we have enough money? Is it not enough for you?" Mo Yinchi didn't say anything. Soon, the old man walked in. The old man bowed slightly to Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, we've already prepared the things you need. They've been packed in 2 carriages. We've also arranged for servants to escort you all the way. Young Master Yi, do you need anything else?" Yi Xian cupped his fists. "Thank you very much. And how many gold coins in total?" The old man smiled. "Just treat it as a free gift." "A free gift?" Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He took out a bag and placed it on the table in front of him. "There are 36 gold coins in here. I think it should be enough. Goodbye." After saying that, he pulled Yi Ling and walked out of the door. Bei Zhe and Mo Yinchi hurriedly followed. In the private room, the old man smiled bitterly. He originally wanted Yi Xian to owe him a small favor. But obviously, Yi Xian didn't want to owe the Drunken Immortal restaurant a small favor. After keeping the bag of money, the old man followed them out. In front of the entrance of the Drunken Immortal restaurant, 2 carriages were already waiting. The carriages were loaded to the brim. Behind the carriages, there were 3 huge iron cages. In the iron cages, there were some livestock. Fortunately, the Drunken Immortal restaurant had arranged manpower. Otherwise, he really wouldn't be able to bring these things away. Yi Xian looked at Mo Yinchi and Bei Zhe. "Let's go." The 2 of them jumped onto the carriage. Yi Xian also jumped onto one of the carriages with Yi Ling. Just like that, the group of people left in a grandiose manner. Behind Yi Xian and the others, the old man looked at the bag of money in his hand and shook his head. Along the way, Yi Xian and the others naturally attracted the attention of others. Because they brought too many things. Yi Xian had no choice. Sanglan Academy was very far from the imperial city. It was impossible for him to come here every day. That was too much of a waste of time. At this moment, someone suddenly exclaimed, "That's Yi Xian." Yi Xian. Along with this exclamation, the gazes of countless people in the surroundings all turned to look at him. Seeing the surrounding gazes, Yi Xian was a little stunned. Was he that famous? It's really Yi Xian. Someone said, "He's the trash that Kuraki Academy doesn't want." TSK, this Sanglan Academy really doesn't care about face. They actually want the trash that Kuraki Academy doesn't want. No wonder they were suppressed by Kuraki Academy. But I heard that Nguesher seems to think highly of him. Even Nguesher can make a mistake. Look at him, he's only at the Qi transformation realm. He hasn't even reached the Qi controlling realm. This kind of trash doesn't even have the qualifications to be an errand boy in Kuraki Academy. In the field, everyone was talking about Yi Xian without the slightest scruple. Yi Xian was expressionless. Society was like this. Many people like to step on others to show their superiority. Don't talk about my brother. At this moment, Yi Ling suddenly glared at the people around her. My brother didn't offend any of you. What right do you have to talk about him? Below, a young man laughed. I want to talk about your brother. Your brother is trash. A trash that Kuraki Academy doesn't want. How about it? Bite me, haha. Yi Ling was so angry that her face turned red. She angrily pointed at the young man. Brother, hit him. On the carriage, Yi Xian flashed down. The next moment, the young man who spoke before was directly sent flying. This time, he flew for a full 5 or 6 feet until he hit a wall. The young man lay on the ground and kept wailing. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His ribs were all broken. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they witnessed this scene. This Yi Xian publicly hit someone? On the other side, Mo Yinchi watched and shook his head. He finally understood that one could offend this Yi Xian, but never, ever offend his sister. Otherwise, he would make one regret being born into this world. He actually hit someone in the street. He's too arrogant. Does he still have any respect for the law? Everyone pointed at Yi Xian, but no one dared to make a move. Yi Xian glanced at the people around him and suddenly roared, "Shut up!" The surroundings suddenly became quiet. Yi Xian glanced at the people one by one. Cut the crap. If you don't like me, Yi Xian, then come and hit me. Come on. I'll do it. At this moment, a young man suddenly rushed out from the crowd. However, as soon as he rushed in front of Yi Xian, he was directly sent flying by Yi Xian's fist. Similarly, after the young man smashed to the ground, he was unable to get up again. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings. Anyone else? The surroundings were silent. Many people were always like this, bullying the weak and fearing the strong. TSK. Since when did Sanglan Academy's dogs dare to be so arrogant in the Imperial City? At this moment, suddenly a voice came from the side. Soon, 3 men wearing ink-white robes walked over from afar. It's the students of Kuraki Academy. Someone in the crowd exclaimed. Soon, the surroundings were boiling. The silent people in the surroundings started to chatter again. Obviously, the appearance of the students of Kuraki Academy gave them great courage. Mo Yinchi's eyes slightly narrowed when he saw the students of Kuraki Academy, and Bei Zai's expression also turned cold. The two of them jumped off the carriage at the same time, and then came to Yi Xian's side. Kuraki Academy and Sanglan Academy, these two academies could be said to be true enemies. The enmity between the two academies was innate. In the past, as long as the students of the two academies met, nothing good would happen. However, as Sanglan Academy declined, towards the end, Sanglan Academy's students would basically avoid Kuraki Academy's students. The 3 Kuraki Academy students walked in front of Yi Xian's group, and the leading Kuraki Academy student sized up Yi Xian and ridiculed. So you're the trash that my Kuraki Academy doesn't want? Chi Transformation Realm? TSK, Sanglan Academy is really declining. Even trash like you. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly flew up and kicked the chest of the man who spoke. Bang! Under the gaze of the crowd, the man's entire body was sent flying, and in the air, the man spat out blood. Everyone was stunned. Mo Yinchi and Bei Zai were also stunned, because they didn't expect Yi Xian to attack. The surroundings were completely silent. When Yi Xian sent the man flying, he quickly whipped out 2 legs from his left and right, and the remaining 2 Kuraki Academy students were caught off guard and were directly kicked away. Yi Xian didn't stop, he rushed in front of the 3 people, and then picked up the money bags from their waists. Then, he quickly returned to Mo Yinchi and Bei Zai's side. Run! Run? Mo Yinchi and Bei Zai, who were preparing to go all out, were instantly stunned. They thought they had heard wrong. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had already carried Yi Ling back to the carriage, and then drove away. Beat up people, snatch the things, and run, everyone. P.S. Created a reader group, 677540563. Everyone can come in and brag. Chapter 44. Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi weren't the only ones who were stunned. Running away after beating someone up. Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi quickly came back to their senses, and the two of them hurriedly followed. Everyone in the surroundings gazed at the three students from Kuraki Academy. At this moment, the expressions of the three students were incomparably ferocious. For so many years, when had Kuraki Academy ever suffered such a setback? Not only were they beaten up, but they were also robbed by someone from Tsanglan Academy. It was a great humiliation. The leading student suddenly roared, "Chase after them." After speaking, he directly rushed over. The other two students also followed closely behind. For the three of them, what happened just now was undoubtedly a great humiliation. If they didn't get rid of this humiliation, they would undoubtedly become the laughingstock of the entire Kuraki Academy. Not only that, they would also tarnish the reputation of Kuraki Academy. For so many years, only Kuraki Academy bullied Tsanglan Academy. When had Kuraki Academy ever been bullied by Tsanglan Academy? Humiliation could only be washed away with blood. The eyes of the three students were filled with cold killing intent. Yi Xian and the others were carrying a lot of things, so their speed was naturally slow. After a while, the three students from Kuraki Academy caught up with Yi Xian and the others. Yi Xian stopped and jumped off the carriage. He turned around and looked straight at the three students from Kuraki Academy. Soon, the three of them were getting closer and closer to Yi Xian. The leading young man said ferociously, "You bastard, you actually dare." Before he finished speaking, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared from his spot. When he reappeared, he was already in front of him. At the same time, Yi Xian swept his leg at him. The sweep of his leg tore through the air. The young man's expression changed greatly. In a hurry, he could only hurriedly use his left hand to block it. Bang! Crack! Along with a muffled sound and the sound of bones breaking, the young man's entire body was directly smashed into the wall several meters away. Bang! The wall shook violently and immediately collapsed. Fortunately, the young man's reaction was extremely fast. He rolled backwards and was not buried by the wall. However, as soon as he stopped, a foot stepped on his abdomen. Yi Xian stared coldly at the young man beneath his feet. The young man's eyes were filled with malevolence and madness. "Kill me if you have the ability. Otherwise, I'll kill your entire family. You." At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stepped on the young man's throat. Crack! The young man's voice stopped abruptly as fresh blood flowed ceaselessly from the corner of his mouth. At the moment he breathed his last, his eyes were wide open and filled with disbelief. When they saw Yi Xian kill, the other two students of Kuraki Academy were finally slightly panicked. The reason why they dared to chase after Yi Xian's group without the slightest scruple was because they had the confidence. In their hearts, the students of Tsanglan Academy wouldn't dare to kill them no matter what. However, reality told them that they were wrong. The two of them had already started to slowly retreat. Right now, they no longer cared about shame. They only wanted to live. On the other side, Mo Yunqi and Bai Zai's expressions were slightly solemn. If it was said to be a small fight earlier, then it wasn't a small fight now. They were in big trouble. Nearby, after Yi Xian killed the young man, he turned around and leaped onto his horse. "Let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, he held tightly onto Yi Ling's hand and clamped the carriage between his legs as it moved towards the distance. Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi hurriedly followed after him. After around 10 minutes, a group of men in ink-white robes arrived where Yi Xian's group was earlier. When they saw the young man's corpse on the ground not too far away, their expressions instantly became ferocious. The leader of this group was a man who held a black spear. The man had slanted brows, starry eyes, and a slender figure. He could be said to be a handsome man. This man was one of the three great geniuses of Kuraki Academy's outer court, Suoli. Senior Zuoli. A nearby student of Kuraki Academy spoke in a ferocious voice. These students of Tsanglan Academy are really audacious. They actually dared to kill a student of our Kuraki Academy in broad daylight. Senior Zuoli, I request for permission to fight to the death. I'm willing to take my own life before the academy if I don't annihilate all the students of Tsanglan Academy. As soon as he finished speaking, he intended to charge out, but he was stopped by a spear. All the students looked at Zuoli in succession. Zuoli glanced at the end of the street. A debt of blood must be paid with blood. Today, I'll annihilate Tsanglan Academy. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged out. Moreover, there were over 20 students of Kuraki Academy behind him. At a certain place in the wilderness, Yi Xian's group was dashing madly on the carriage. On the way, Mo Yinchi glanced at Yi Xian. Weren't you a bit too impulsive earlier? Yi Xian said indifferently, I gave him a chance to live. Mo Yinchi fell silent. Yi Xian continued, if we don't kill him, he will pursue us relentlessly. Moreover, if we give him a chance, he won't show us any mercy, right? Bai Zai suddenly nodded. Yes, he deserves to be killed. Mo Yinchi smiled bitterly. He deserves to be killed, but what should we do after killing him? Kuraki Academy will definitely not let this matter rest. Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yinchi. I'll fight the young one, and old man Ji will fight the old one. What if we can't win? Mo Yinchi asked. Yi Xian shrugged his shoulders. If we can't win, then we can't win. What else can we do? Under the enhancement of battle intent, this low-level martial technique had completely surpassed the might of a low-level martial technique. The fist and spear collided. Bang! Along with the sound of an explosion, Zuoli's entire body was pushed back over 10 m along with his spear. In the process of his retreat, his feet had forcefully carved out 2 deep trenches on the ground. As soon as Zuoli stopped, Yi Xian had charged in front of him once more. At the same time, Yi Xian blasted another fist towards him. It was the same fist crush. There was no technique at all. It was just a simple punch that was direct and violent. It was direct and forceful. Zuoli's pupils constricted when he sensed the strength within Yi Xian's fist. He didn't dare act carelessly, and the energy within his body surged madly into the spear in his hand before he stabbed it forward. The spear and sword flickered with a cold light as they stabbed forward. At the same time, a sharp and ear-piercing sound of something being torn apart resounded. It was the sound of the spear tearing through the air. Under the gazes of everyone, the fist and spear collided in the most violent manner possible. Bang! As soon as they collided, both Yi Xian and Zuoli retreated explosively at the same time. But in next to no time, Yi Xian stopped while Zuoli was still retreating explosively. At the same time, Yi Xian charged towards Zuoli once more. This time, Zuoli didn't have the time to deal with it. Yi Xian's fist smashed onto Zuoli's chest. Pooh! A mouthful of blood essence sprayed out from Zuoli's mouth, and then his figure arched as he flew backwards. Right when Yi Xian was about to attack again, the group of students from Kuraki Academy behind Zuoli suddenly charged towards Yi Xian. A ferocious glow instantly appeared in Bai Zai's eyes when he witnessed this scene, and in the next moment, he charged towards that group of people. At the instant he charged over, every single step he took left a deep footprint on the ground. On the other hand, Yi Xian didn't waste his breath at all, and he charged directly towards that group of people. He wasn't afraid of a one-on-one battle, and he wasn't afraid of a group battle either. Wait for me. Right at this moment, a voice resounded from behind Yi Xian and Bai Zai. It was Mo Yinchi. Mo Yinchi was like a gust of wind as he attacked from afar. He was extremely swift, and he arrived by Yi Xian and Bai Zai's side in the blink of an eye. Mo Yinchi gazed at the 20+ people that were charging over from afar, and he laughed savagely as he said, "Can they kill us?" Yi Xian said indifferently, "Do you think they will kill us?" "Ha! Mo Yunqi laughed heartily and said, I actually asked such a stupid question. Kill them. Let them know that from today onwards, our Lan Academy isn't so easily bullied. As his voice fell, he suddenly clasped his hands together, and the moment he separated them, 2 cold lights flashed out from his palms. Flying dagger. In the distance, the heads of 2 students from Kuraki Academy directly flew out. But in the next moment, Mo Yunqi was directly sent flying by a student from Kuraki Academy, but in the next instant, that student's head was instantly blasted apart by Yi Xian's punch. But very quickly, another student from Kuraki Academy directly collided with Yi Xian's body. Chapter 45. A group fight. The battlefield was a mess. Even though Yi Xian's group of 3 were formidable, Kuraki Academy had the advantage in numbers. So, when the battle started, Yi Xian's group of 3 didn't gain much of an advantage. After all, any student that was able to join Kuraki Academy wasn't trash. However, Kuraki Academy didn't gain much of an advantage, and it should be said that they were in a very miserable state. Because up until now, 6 or 7 students from Kuraki Academy had died miserably. Bang! After Yi Xian blasted a student flying with a single punch, he was just about to follow up with another attack when a spear tore through the sky towards him. It was Zuo Li. Yi Xian stopped moving. He didn't dodge, and he allowed Zuo Li's spear to stab into his chest. Bang! Yi Xian retreated by over 3 m. However, Zuo Li's expression changed violently because Yi Xian had used his body to forcefully block his spear. This was something he hadn't expected, and since he hadn't expected this, then the consequences would naturally be severe. Sure enough, Yi Xian suddenly grabbed Zuo Li's spear, and in the next moment, he pressed forward along the spear and suddenly struck his knee against Zuo Li's stomach. Bang! Zuo Li's entire body was instantly blasted flying by over 10 m. Bang! Zuo Li crashed to the ground while blood sprayed from his mouth, and the internal organs in his stomach had been shattered by Yi Xian's knee strike. Yi Xian walked over to Zuo Li, and then Zuo Li raised his head to look at Yi Xian with an extremely savage expression. I underestimated you. But after we die today, the Academy won't underestimate you anymore. As he spoke, he suddenly roared furiously towards the surroundings. Let's go. At this moment, all the students from Kuraki Academy in the surroundings stopped, and they intended to charge at Yi Xian when they saw Zuo Li's appearance. Yi Xian coldly looked at those people, and they immediately stopped. It wasn't that they were afraid of Yi Xian, but they were afraid that Yi Xian would kill Zuo Li. Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi walked to the left and right of Yi Xian. Both of them had different degrees of injuries, especially Mo Yunqi. Blood was still flowing from the corner of his mouth, and there were many cracks on Bai Zai's upper body. The weakest of these students from Kuraki Academy were at least in the Qi-controlling realm. Moreover, they were not ordinary Qi-controlling realm cultivators. The fact that the 3 of them were able to survive after fighting against 20 of them was already extremely terrifying. In front of Yi Xian, Zuo Li slowly stood up, and once again roared at the students of Kuraki Academy, "Run!" He was no fool. After a round of battle, he already knew that he and the others had severely underestimated the strength of the 3 people in front of him. If they continued fighting, they would all be sacrificed in vain. In the surroundings, not a single one of the Kuraki Academy students tried to escape. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned and walked away. Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi glanced at Zuo Li, whose internal organs had been severely injured by Yi Xian, and then turned and left as well. At this moment, Zuo Li suddenly laughed sinisterly. "What? Are you going to humiliate me? Ha! I, a student of Kuraki Academy, would rather die than be humiliated by a student of Lan Academy." As soon as he finished speaking, under everyone's gaze, Zuo Li's right hand clenched into a fist, and then he suddenly punched his throat. Crack! His bones shattered, and Zuo Li's body stiffened on the spot. Senior Zuo Li. In the surroundings, all the students of Karaki Academy rushed to Zhuo corpse, and their tears flowed down. Not far away, beside Yi Xian, Mo Yinchi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Damn it, it's as though the three of us are the bad guys. Who the hell is the bully here? Bai Zhe rubbed his upper body, and soon, the cracks on his body began to gradually recover. He glanced at Yi Xian, who was beside him. Your fleshly body is formidable. During the battle earlier, he noticed that Yi Xian's fleshly body wasn't inferior to his at all. Yi Xian said in a light voice, "You're formidable as well." This wasn't a compliment. Up until now, amongst the younger generation, only Bai Zhe was comparable to him in terms of fleshly body. Right at this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian's group of three. The middle-aged man wore a golden silk robe, and on the left side of his chest, there was the symbol of Karaki Academy. Yi Xian recognized this person. It was Li Xiu, the vice dean of Karaki Academy. Things have gotten out of hand. But it was normal, someone had already died, so things had definitely gotten out of hand. Li Xiu stared fixedly at Yi Xian. You want to leave after killing someone? Yi Xian laughed with ridicule. Kill someone? What? Only your Karaki Academy students are allowed to kill someone, but my Tsanglan Academy students are not allowed to? Or are you saying that Karaki Academy has no more students, and you want the dignified vice dean to come out and take revenge? Li Xiu sneered, goading me? Don't worry, I won't bully you. As he spoke, he turned to look at a rock in the distance, and there, an old man was lying on it. This person was none other than Old Man Ji. The corner of Li Xiu's mouth gradually turned malevolent. Old Man Ji, from this moment onwards, I declare war on Tsanglan Academy. War. Right at this moment, Old Man Ji suddenly stood up, and in the next moment, under everyone's gaze, he plucked a weed beside him and casually threw it away. Li Xiu's expression changed greatly, and he suddenly clasped his hands together. In an instant, a formless aura appeared around him, and at the same time, a powerful force surged out from his hands like a tidal wave. Yi Xian and the other two were directly blasted away by this force. At this moment, under the astonished gazes of Yi Xian and the other two, the weed was like a sharp sword, directly piercing through the force released by Li Xiu, and even the aura released by Li Xiu instantly vanished without a trace. Hiss! Li Xiu's right arm was directly sent flying. The surroundings fell silent. Witnessing this scene, Yi Xian and the other two were dumbstruck. Mo Yinchi gulped. This old man is so amazing. Next time when we speak to him, should we be more respectful? Yi Xian was also slightly shocked. This old man's strength was truly terrifying. He was probably slightly stronger than the third master of the Drunken Immortal Inn. In the distance, Old Man Ji glanced at Li Xiu. War? Are you sure? Li Xiu stared fixedly at Old Man Ji, and his expression was extremely unsightly. Old Man Ji drank a mouthful of wine, and shook his head. Do you know why Tsanglan Academy still hasn't collapsed? As he spoke, he pointed at himself. Because of me, as long as I don't die, Tsanglan Academy will not close its doors. If you want to start a war, fine, I'll let you kill these three little fellows. But, this old man guarantees your Karaki Academy that your Karaki Academy students below the age of 30 will not live to see tomorrow's sun. If you don't believe me, then feel free to come. Anyway, these three fellows here are picked up, I don't care. Hearing this, Yi Xian and the other two almost went berserk. Picked up? Motherf asterisk cur. Mo Yinchi glared at Old Man Ji. Beat him up. Yi Xian looked at Mo Yinchi. You go first. Go your ass. Mo Yinchi glared at Yi Xian. You want to sell me out again? Yi Xian said seriously, Big brother, next time when you want to beat someone up, can you have some idea? Can't you fight when you can't win? Don't *king fight when you can't win. This isn't beating people up, this is asking for a beating. Mo Yinchi. At this moment, Old Man Ji suddenly looked at Yi Xian and the other two. What are you still mumbling about? Let's go. Mo Yinchi and Bai Zhe were about to leave, but at this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Wait." Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Xian walked to the corpses of the Kuraki Academy students. One by one, he collected the money pouch and weapons from the waist of the corpses, but he didn't collect Swoli's. Seeing Yi Xian's actions, everyone was stunned. Old man Ji directly lied down, pretending to be dead. Not far away, Mo Yinshi hurriedly walked to Yi Xian's side. He pulled on Yi Xian's sleeve. "Big brother, can't you have some face? There are so many people watching." Yi Xian glared at him. "Face? Do you want to eat or eat grass?" Mo Yinshi didn't say anything. He obediently returned to Bai Zai's side. Mo Yinshi covered his face with both hands, shaking his head. "Shameful. Shameful." Just like this, under everyone's gaze, Yi Xian collected 8 to 9 money pouches and 5 to 6 weapons. He glanced at those weapons. They weren't ordinary, they could be sold for a good price. Yi Xian nodded in satisfaction, then looked at Bai Zai and Mo Yinshi not far away. "What are you waiting for? Come over and help set up the carriage." The two of them didn't move. Yi Xian said calmly, "You can eat grass tonight." Mo Yinshi hurriedly ran over, then jumped onto one of the carriages. Bai Zai hesitated for a moment, then slowly walked over. Just like this, under the gaze of the Kuraki Academy students, Yi Xian and the other two slowly set up the carriage, heading into the distance. Old man Ji didn't leave, instead lying on the rocks, as if he had fallen asleep. Li Xiu stared at old man Ji. "Today isn't the end, it's the beginning." After saying that, he turned around and left with the group of Kuraki Academy students. On the rocks, old man Ji still had his eyes closed, snoring. What happened between Kuraki Academy and Sanglan Academy, like a plague, instantly spread throughout the imperial capital. The entire imperial capital was shocked. Sanglan Academy students killed Kuraki Academy students. How many years has it been since something like this happened? Could it be that Sanglan Academy was going to rise? For a moment, the entire imperial capital was in a heated discussion. Country of Zhang's imperial palace, Yangxin Palace. A middle-aged man dressed in a luxurious robe looked at the secret report in his hand. Looking at it, the middle-aged man suddenly chuckled. The middle-aged man got up and walked to the entrance of the hall, looking up at the horizon. Little Nine's secret report says that the youth who dared to face thousands of Tang's black-armored cavalrymen alone in Two World City has come to the imperial capital. He's the Yi Xian who's the talk of the town now. In a corner of the hall, a woman's voice suddenly sounded. "I've already looked up his information. He's from Qingsheng, grew up with his younger sister when his parents weren't around, and devoted himself to the Yi family, but was abandoned by the Yi family in the end. In order to treat his younger sister's illness, he brought her to the imperial capital." The middle-aged man glanced at the corner and smiled. This should be what's on the surface. In the corner, a wheelchair slowly slid out, and in the wheelchair sat a woman in a black dress. She looked very young and very beautiful, but her hair was snow white. Apart from that, her eyes were closed, and they had been closed all this time. The woman in the black dress said softly, "And Guisher treated him differently, and he came out unscathed after killing an elder of the drunken immortal abode on the cloud ship. There's no way to find out the details." The middle-aged man said with a smile, "It's not easy to survive after killing an elder of the drunken immortal abode." With that, he walked back to the desk and took out a golden round plate. Then, he took out a golden brush and wrote the word Yi on the front of the round plate. And behind the round plate, there were 2 words, Guisher. The middle-aged man suddenly turned to look at the woman. "You don't object?" The woman asked, "Why should I object? There's no harm in it." The middle-aged man laughed and said, "Nowadays, many young people only care about their own little plans, especially those from aristocratic families and academies. In their hearts, there's only their families and academies. Country? They don't have a country in their hearts." At that time, that youth dared to stand up against the Tang army without any interest or purpose. Just based on this, he deserves the title of the Guisher. With that, he turned to look at the woman in the black dress. I'll have to trouble Nation Master Lu to go to Kanglan Academy for me. Chapter 46. Tsanglan Academy, Tsanglan Hall. Inside the hall, everyone sat around the table. Yi Xian and his sister would occasionally bring a dish to the table. None of the dishes were particularly exquisite, but they smelled especially fragrant and appetizing. At the side, Ji Anji licked his chopsticks. He wanted to eat a few times but was stopped by Old Man Ji, Bai Zai, and Mo Yinchi. If this woman were to eat now, they wouldn't even have a bone to chew on. After a while, all the dishes were finally served. 12 dishes. There were meat and vegetables. Yi Ling obediently scooped a bowl of rice for everyone, then sat beside Yi Xian. Old Man Ji took a sip of wine. I was too impulsive today. Everyone was silent. Yi Xian thought for a moment. They want to bully us. Old Man Ji said, we can endure it for a while. Yi Xian asked, will they let us go if we endure it? He shook his head. No, the more we endure, the more they will be annoyed. When I was in Qingcheng, I met some people. They are very fierce and fierce. The weaker you are, the more they will bully you. Only by fighting with them and hurting them will they respect you and not dare to bully you easily. Old Man Ji was silent. Mo Yinchi was silent. Ji Anji only cared about eating. At this moment, Bai Zai suddenly said, he's right. When I was in Mount Mang, I often fought with demonic beasts. When you meet a demonic beast, you must not run. The more you run, the more ferocious it will be and the more likely it will attack you. You can only fight with it until it is afraid. The next time it sees you, it will not dare to bully you easily and will even retreat. As he said that, he raised the wine glass beside his bowl and pointed it at Yi Xian. Well done. Yi Xian also raised his wine glass. He glanced at Mo Yinchi, who thought for a moment and also raised his wine glass. The three of them looked at each other and drank it in one gulp. They did not know each other before, but now they had a common identity. They were students of Tsanglan Academy. Old Man Ji did not say anything else and started eating. The surrounding people were like the reincarnation of hungry ghosts. In less than a quarter of an hour, all the food on the table had been swept clean. After eating, Old Man Ji gulped down a mouthful of wine and said, come to the back mountain at midnight tonight. With that, he turned around and left. Ji Anji put down her chopsticks and glanced at Yi Xian. Can you make more? The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. He pointed to the side and said, I left some for you in the pantry. Ji Anji nodded. Thank you. After saying that, she picked up her chopsticks and turned to leave. Yi Ling cleverly put away the bowls and chopsticks on the table, while Bai Zai and Mo Yinchi ran away after eating. Washing dishes and whatnot was killing them. Seeing the two of them running away, Yi Ling covered her mouth and chuckled. Yi Xian was a little helpless. He helped clean up and said, let's go, I'll help you wash up. Just as Yi Ling was about to speak, there was a sudden sound outside the hall. Yi Xian turned around and a wheelchair appeared outside the hall. A woman in a black dress was sitting in the wheelchair. Want to talk? The woman in the black dress suddenly said. Yi Xian pointed to himself. Me? The woman in the black dress nodded. Yi Ling smiled sweetly at Yi Xian. Brother, you go. I'll clean up. Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. Be careful. Yi Ling nodded and walked to the side with the bowls and chopsticks. Yi Xian walked to the woman in the black dress. What's the matter? The woman in the black dress stretched out her right hand and a golden disc flew in front of Yi Xian. This is? Yi Xian was puzzled. The woman in the black dress said, by the order of the king, you are conferred the title of Kingdom Knight. Kingdom Knight. Yi Xian was stunned. A moment later, Yi Xian shook his head and returned the disc. I didn't do anything to deserve a reward. The woman in the black dress did not take it. You fought against the Tang army in Two World City. Yi Xian smiled. That's all? The woman in the black dress did not speak. Yi Xian sat in front of the stone steps. That was a long time ago. But now you're conferring me the title of Kingdom Knight. Forgive me for being straightforward, but you have other motives, don't you? The woman in the black dress was still silent. Yi Xian continued, now that I've joined the Kanglan Academy and had a conflict with the Kuraki Academy. Let me guess. If I'm not wrong, the royal family doesn't want the Kuraki Academy to be the only big school in the Jiang country. Because the bigger and stronger the Kuraki Academy is, the more disadvantageous it is for the royal family and the imperial power. But now, you see that the Kanglan Academy seems to have the ability to fight against the Kuraki Academy, so you want to pull them together so that the two academies will fight to the death. Am I right? The woman in the black dress crossed her fingers on her lap. You're much smarter than I thought. Yi Xian looked straight at the woman in the black dress. I don't want to be used. The woman in the black dress shook her head. From the moment you joined the Kanglan Academy, you were destined to bear the hatred between the Kanglan Academy and the Kuraki Academy. There's no right or wrong in a feud, only a matter of position. As you said, the Jiang country does hope that someone can balance the Kuraki Academy, but this is not the real reason for conferring you the title of Kingdom Knight. Yi Xian walked in front of the woman in the black dress. Then what's the real reason? The woman in the black dress raised her head. She still did not open her eyes. There's someone who dared to face the Tang Empire's black armored cavalry alone outside the Two World City. Yi Xian was silent. The woman in the black dress suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's right hand, and then placed the golden disc in his palm. Whether it's the Kanglan Academy or the Kuraki Academy, everyone is actually from the Jiang country. Unfortunately, many people forget this point. Only those who have the country in their hearts and the ability to do so can be called a kingdom scholar. You are worthy of this title, and this title will not restrict you. On the contrary, in the future, you will be able to obtain the help of the country wherever you go. After saying that, a mysterious person appeared behind the woman in the black dress. The mysterious person pushed the woman in the black dress and left. After the mysterious person pushed the woman down the mountain, they suddenly stopped. Not far in front of them, there was a drunk old man lying on the ground. The woman in the black dress bowed slightly. Old G. Old G still did not speak. The woman in the black dress continued, although he has the intention to use you, the king has no malice. Old G turned his body sideways. The news of him being a kingdom knight must not be spread out. The current him can't afford to bear too much attention. The woman in the black dress bowed slightly. Understood, thank you. After saying that, the mysterious person pushed the woman in the black dress away. Old G was sleeping soundly. In the middle of the night, it was midnight. Yi Xian, Bai Zai, and Mo Yinchi arrived at the back of the mountain. There was a waterfall at the back of the mountain. The waterfall was over 10 feet wide, and the water was extremely fast. At this moment, Old Ji and Ji Anji were already waiting there. Mo Yinchi chuckled. Old Ji, are you going to teach us some peerless martial skill? At this moment, Old Ji whistled. In the next moment, a pitch-black wolf suddenly ran out from the distant forest. The wolf was several feet tall, and its fur was like sharp swords. Its eyes emitted a chilling murderous light. Demon wolf. Bai Zai's expression was incomparably vigilant. High Sky Realm. Old Ji pointed at Mo Yinchi. The latter was stunned. Old Ji, what do you mean? At this moment, the demon wolf directly rushed towards Mo Yinchi. Its speed was so fast that even Yi Xian could only see an afterimage. Damn it. Old Ji, are you crazy? Mo Yinchi turned around and ran. His speed was also very fast, comparable to the demon wolf. However, in terms of physical strength, Mo Yinchi definitely could not compare to a demon beast. At this moment, old Ji suddenly looked at Bai Zai. Bai Zai puffed out his chest, his eyes fearless. The thing he was least afraid of was demon beasts. In Mount Mang, he fought with demon beasts every day. Old Ji suddenly grabbed Bai Zai. Bai Zai subconsciously wanted to resist, but when he exerted force, he was shocked to find that he could not exert any strength at all. Under Yi Xian's astonished gaze, old Ji put a metal chain on Bai Zai's feet that was as thick as an arm. Then, he suddenly threw Bai Zai towards the waterfall in the distance, and Bai Zai's entire body directly smashed into the waterfall. At this moment, another demon wolf appeared. That demon wolf leaped to the side of the waterfall. It grabbed a metal chain on the mountain wall and pulled it down with force. In the waterfall, Bai Zai's entire body went against the flow of the waterfall. The powerful impact of the water instantly created red marks on Bai Zai's upper body. At first, it was still fine, but after 2 or 3 times, there were cries of pain coming from the waterfall. Not to mention Bai Zai, even Yi Xian felt his scalp tingle. His physical body was also strong, but the water was too fast. Coupled with the fact that he was going against the flow, the water was even more terrifying than a knife's edge. At this moment, old Ji looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. This guy's training was a little abnormal. Old Ji sized up Yi Xian, then shook his head. In the entire imperial capital, in terms of foundation, apart from that in Guisher, you are not inferior to anyone. Yi Xian laughed awkwardly. It's just a so-so, just a so-so. Old Ji fell silent. He seemed to be in a dilemma. This guy's foundation was too good, and he could not forcefully increase his realm. After a while, old Ji suddenly asked, "Have you comprehended battle intent?" Yi Xian nodded. Old Ji nodded. Then it's easy. As he said that, he turned and walked to the side. Follow me. Yi Xian hurriedly followed, and Ji Anji also followed closely behind. Soon, under old Ji's lead, Yi Xian arrived at the foot of a small mountain. The mountain was not particularly big, but it was not small either. In any case, it was at least 10 times bigger than the Kanglan Palace. Old Ji pointed at the small mountain in front of them. What is your best fist technique? Yi Xian said, fist collapse. It's only a low-level martial technique. Old man Ji pointed at the small mountain in front of him. Use your fists to smash this mountain. Hit it with all your might until it crumbles. Yi Xian was stunned on the spot. Is there a problem? Old Ji asked. Yi Xian gulped, then pointed at the small mountain. Old Ji. You. Are you drunk tonight? Why don't we talk about cultivation tomorrow? Old Ji looked at Yi Xian for a long time. Finally, he turned around. Take your sister and leave. After saying that, he walked into the distance. Yes, I'll fight. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, I'll fight now. After saying that, he rushed towards the small mountain in the distance. Bang bang bang. Chapter 47. Punching a mountain. In the past, Yi Xian didn't even dare to think of such a thing. But now, he was doing it. He and his sister had to stay at Sanglan Academy. Firstly, this old man Ji could cure his sister. Secondly, if they left now, they would lose old man Ji's protection. Their fates would be miserable. He had to stay here. For his sister, he could even flatten 10 mountains, let alone one. Looking at Yi Xian punching the mountain again and again in the distance, Ji Anji suddenly said, You should ask them to leave. Old man Ji shook his head, if they leave now, they will die. Ji Anji said, we shouldn't have let them come. Old man Ji looked at Ji Anji, yes, coming here means going against Tsangmu Academy. But isn't coming here also an opportunity for them? Moreover, if they didn't meet me, their lives would be much more miserable than they are now. Ji Anji was silent. Old Ji looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away. No matter why they came to the Tsanglan Academy in the past, they are now students of the Tsanglan Academy, and they regard themselves as students of the Tsanglan Academy. So, I will be responsible for them till the end. With that, he turned and walked away. But after a few steps, he collapsed to the side, drunk. Ji Anji didn't help him up. She was already used to it. She turned and looked into the distance. Yi Xian was still punching the mountain in a frenzy. But compared to the entire mountain, he didn't even destroy a corner. On the contrary, his hands were already a bloody mess. Ji Anji shook his head and left. Just like old man Ji said, since they were students of Tsanglan Academy, if they weren't strong enough, they would inevitably add a corpse to Xiao Dao Tsangmu Academy in the future. Under the night sky, Yi Xian punched again and again, asking in his heart, "Senior, is this method effective?" The mysterious woman didn't answer. Yi Xian asked twice more, but the mysterious woman still didn't answer. Helpless, he could only continue punching. Was it painful? Of course it was. Although he was already at the golden body realm and his physical body was much stronger than ordinary martial artists, it did not mean that he was invincible. However, he did not doubt old man Ji's method. Although he did not know the meaning of doing this, he knew that he would find out soon. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was already dawn. Yi Xian stopped, and just as he stopped, old man Ji appeared in front of him. Old man Ji threw him a bag of herbs. Crush them and use them on your fists and arms. With that, he turned around and left. Yi Xian opened the bag of herbs and crushed them. Then, he applied them on his arms. The moment the herbs came into contact with his skin, he jumped up in pain. Ouch! When those herbs came into contact with his skin, it was like a piece of red-hot iron was placed on his skin. It was extremely painful. But fortunately, he forcefully endured it. Because he realized that the injuries on his hands were slowly healing. Actually, this little bit of pain was not a big deal to him. After all, when he was cultivating the hidden realm, the golden body realm, the pain he suffered was truly unforgettable. Now that he thought about it, he felt a lingering fear. A moment later, Yi Xian looked at his arms. At this moment, his arms were red like a piece of red iron. He turned around and charged towards the small mountain again. Bang bang bang, numerous explosions resounded incessantly in the surroundings. Just like that, the explosions lasted until noon before they stopped. It was time for lunch. Yi Xian came to the waterfall to wash up. Just as he was about to leave, a figure floated up from below the waterfall. It was Bai Zai. At this moment, a layer of Bai Zai's skin had already been peeled off. A layer of skin had truly been peeled off. It was a terrible sight to behold. Bai Zai crawled over to the rock and tossed a bag of herbs to Yi Xian. "Help, help me." Yi Xian picked up the bag and walked over to Bai Zai, and then he crushed the herbs within the bag. After that, he applied the herbs on Bai Zai's body. Bai Zai sucked in a breath of cold air and almost cried out, but he forcefully held it in. However, his entire body was trembling. As he watched Bai Zai's injuries heal slowly, Yi Xian said softly, "This medicine is not bad." Bai Zai took a deep breath and said, "Of course. This is an excellent spirit herb, and a single leaf can be sold for at least 50 gold coins." Yi Xian suddenly stopped, and he looked at the remaining herbs in his hand. "Really?" Bai Zai nodded. "Of course." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Why don't we stop applying it and sell it instead?" "Big brother. Don't joke around, 50/50. Hurry up and apply it, 70/30. Can I beat you to death?" An hour later, Yi Xian and Bai Zai returned to the Tsanglan Palace. At the entrance of the Tsanglan Palace, there was a man lying on the ground. It was Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi was lying there, and both his legs were twitching like pendulums. Last night, he was chased by the demon wolf for an entire night, and his legs were almost broken. Yi Xian glanced at Yunqi, and then turned to leave. An hour later, everyone sat around the table. Today, the atmosphere was slightly different. When Yi Ling served everyone their food, Yunqi immediately began to sweep the table. Bai Zai hesitated for a moment before he began to sweep the table. Yi Xian also ate well. After cultivating for an entire night, firstly, he was tired, and secondly, he was hungry. Seeing Yi Xian wolfing down the food, Yi Ling's heart ached. She quickly scooped a bowl of soup for Yi Xian, and then she lightly patted Yi Xian's back. "Big brother, eat slowly, don't choke." Not far away, Yunqi glanced at Yi Xian and his sister, and then he sighed softly. Why are other people's sisters so obedient, but our own? Sigh. After saying that, he continued to bury his head in the food. At this moment, Old Man Ji stood up. "From today onwards, you are not allowed to go down the mountain." After saying that, he turned and left. "Why?" Yunqi suddenly asked. Old Man Ji did not stop. "If you want to die, go down." Yunqi looked at Ji Anji, who licked his chopsticks. "Some students from Kuraki College have arrived at the foot of the mountain, and they are waiting for you to go down the mountain every day." Yunqi sneered. "What are you afraid of?" Ji Anji glanced at Yunqi. "You can beat one, but can you beat 10? Moreover, I heard that there are disciples from the inner court. In short, don't underestimate Kuraki College. Last time, they looked down on you, and you caught them off guard. But now, it won't happen again. Those who dare to come will not be trash. Of course, if you feel that cultivating is boring and want to find something more exciting, you can go down the mountain and fight with them." After saying that, she stood up and went to the kitchen. Because every time, Yi Xian would leave a portion of food for her. After the meal, Yi Xian changed into a new set of clothes and went on to Blasting Mountain. Bai Zai, on the other hand, returned to the waterfall. As for Yunqi, he entered the mountain, and behind him was the demon wolf. At the back of the mountain, Yi Xian punched the mountain in front of him again and again. Every time he punched, he would use his own fighting spirit. At first, everything was normal, but gradually, he found that his fighting spirit seemed to have become stronger. Not only his fighting spirit, but even the power of his punches had become stronger. After discovering this, Yi Xian was delighted. Obviously, this cultivation method was very effective. Therefore, he worked even harder. Just like that, Yi Xian and the other two cultivated like this day after day passed. Every day, there would be students from Kuraki College coming to the foot of Tsanglan College's mountain. At first, they were just waiting for Yi Xian and the others to go down the mountain, but gradually, they found that Yi Xian and the others did not seem to have the slightest intention of going down the mountain. Therefore, some people began to go up the mountain in groups. The leader was a man in a brocade robe. He was about 20 years old, tall, and had 2 short sabers hanging from his waist. This person was one of the 3 geniuses of Kuraki College's outer court, Chen Yan. And behind Chen Yan, there were 6 Kuraki College students. Each of them was at the peak of the qi-resisting realm, and their auras were vigorous. Obviously, they were the top experts of the outer court. Beside Chen Yan, a student suddenly said, "Senior Chen Yan, I have inquired that Yi Xian and the others are not weak, especially Yi Xian. I heard that he is a swordsman, even in Guisha treats him differently. This time we must not be careless." Chen Yan nodded. "Of course not. Zhuo Li died because of his carelessness, but it is normal. Not to mention him, even if I met Tsanglan College students before, I would also look down on them." Saying that, he looked up. "The death of Zhuo Li and the others is a wake-up call for us." Everyone nodded. Kuraki College may look down on Tsanglan College once, but they would not look down on it a second time. In any case, it was a millennium-old institution, and the students taught by it were not idiots. Before long, Chen Yan's group arrived before Tsanglan Palace, and there was a little girl washing clothes at the entrance of Tsanglan Palace. This little girl was naturally Yi Ling. When she saw Chen Yan's group, Yi Ling hastily turned around and ran. She ran to Old Man Ji's courtyard, and Old Man Ji was lying on a chair, and his body was still emitting the pungent smell of alcohol. Yi Ling walked to Old Man Ji's side, and then she lightly pushed him and said anxiously, "Grandpa Ji, wake up, they are coming." Old Man Ji did not move. Meanwhile, Chen Yan's group had arrived at the entrance of Old Man Ji's courtyard, and Yi Ling hurriedly hid behind Old Man Ji when she saw this scene. Chen Yan glanced at Old Man Ji who was lying on the chair, and then he bowed slightly. "This junior is Chen Yan from Kuraki College's outer court, and I have specially come to seek guidance from Sanglan College students." Saying that, he looked straight at Old Man Ji, and then he said, "Let's fight to the death. A life or death challenge." Currently, the entire imperial capital was looking at Kuraki Academy. If Kuraki Academy couldn't take revenge for Zhuoli and the others, then it would undoubtedly affect Kuraki Academy's reputation, and Sanglan Academy's reputation would certainly rise. Most importantly, Kuraki College had been suppressing Sanglan College for so many years, and they could not afford to make any mistakes in this year's batch, or else their batch would be a disgrace to Kuraki College. At this time, Old Man Ji suddenly said, "In the back mountain, go." Chen Yan and the others turned and left. On this day, in the back mountain of Sanglan, only one student was destined to survive. Chapter 48. In the courtyard, behind Old Man Ji, Yi Ling asked softly, "Grandpa Ji, are they in danger?" Old Man Ji stood up and looked at the little girl in front of him with a complicated gaze. She rubbed Yi Ling's head gently. "Don't worry, they'll be fine. Just stay here with Grandpa Ji and don't run around, all right?" Yi Ling nodded obediently. "Grandpa Ji, I'll go cook for you." With that, she turned and ran to the kitchen. Her body was trembling slightly because she was worried about her brother's safety. However, she knew very well that she couldn't go to the back mountain at this time because she couldn't help at all. If she went, she would only cause trouble for her brother. In the kitchen, Yi Ling curled up in a corner and hugged her knees. She didn't cry as she looked at the fire in the stove. At this moment, it was as if she had returned to the Yi family in Qingcheng. Back then, when Yi Xian went out during the day, she would wait for Yi Xian for a day. In her world, there was no father, no mother, only her brother. Her brother was her only and everything. In the courtyard, after Yi Ling left, an old man appeared in front of Old Man Ji. The old man wore a linen robe, and his beard reached his chest. His hair was combed into a bun and scattered behind his head. He looked very gentle and refined, forming a huge contrast with the drunk Old Man Ji. This person was the dean of Kuraki Academy, Li Xuansang. He was also one of the top experts in Jiang country. Li Xuansang glanced at Old Man Ji and shook his head. "It's been so many years, but you're still the same." Old Man Ji smiled. "You're getting more and more exquisite." Li Xuansang looked around and said, "There's only one academy in Jiang country. I think it's pretty good." Old Man Ji chuckled. "Isn't Kuraki Academy the biggest in Jiang country now?" Li Xuansang looked straight at Old Man Ji. "I know what you want to do with the 3 people you found, but they will end up like the people you found in the past. They will eventually become a corpse on Song Mountain Xiao Dao." Old Man Ji nodded. "Let's wait and see." Li Xuansang said with a smile, "Then let's wait and see." Back mountain. Mo Yinchi stopped, Bai Zai climbed out of the waterfall, and Yi Xian stopped blasting the mountain. In front of a dense forest, Yi Xian and the other 2 stood side by side. Yi Xian was in the middle. On his left was Mo Yinchi, and on his right was Bai Zai. Opposite them were Chen Yan and the other Kuraki Academy students. Beside Yi Xian, Mo Yinchi suddenly said, "Old Man Ji, let them come up just like that?" Yi Xian looked at Chen Yan and the others in silence. To be honest, although he didn't join Kuraki Academy, he didn't have any enmity or malice towards it. However, there were many times when he couldn't help himself. From the moment he joined Sanglan Academy, he was destined to be Kuraki Academy's enemy. Even if he didn't go looking for trouble with the Kuraki students, the students of Kuraki Academy would come looking for him. A feud that could not be resolved with words. However, Yi Xian was never a person who was afraid of trouble. On the contrary, if it was a fight, Yi Xian had never been afraid of anyone in his life. At this moment, Chen Yan suddenly took a step forward. 3 against 3. Yi Xian turned to look at Mo Yunqi and Bai Zai. Both of them nodded, indicating that there was no problem. 2 men walked out from behind Chen Yan. The man on the left wore a black robe that was exquisite yet not lacking in grandeur. In addition, the man on the right wore a white robe. He had a slender figure, sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, and a cold appearance, as if he was a celestial being. Both of them had an extraordinary bearing. Seeing these 2 people, Yi Xian's expression instantly sank. The feeling of danger. This was his instinctive feeling, and he had always firmly believed in his instincts, because these instincts were trained through countless life and death street battles. The facts proved that Kuraki Academy didn't look down on them anymore. They wouldn't send small fries for them to practice. Yi Xian glanced at Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi. Watch out. Both of them nodded. The white-robed man walked over to stand before Mo Yunqi while the dark-robed man walked over to stand before Bai Zai. Obviously, it was Yi Xian against Chen Yan. Right at this moment, the dark-robed man suddenly vanished on the spot. Bai Zai's expression changed drastically, and he swiftly crossed his hands before him. Meanwhile, the dark-robed man arrived before him. Bang! Following the sound of an explosion, Bai Zai was directly pushed back a full 7 to 8 feet. Moreover, there was a deep blood-red handprint on his arms. Right at this moment, the dark-robed man tapped the ground lightly with the tip of his foot, and then he leaped up into the air towards Bai Zai. He was extremely swift, like a hawk pouncing towards its prey. Ascension Realm. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly when he witnessed this scene. This man that wasn't even 20 years old was actually at the Ascension Realm. Such a young genius at the Ascension Realm. In the distance, Bai Zai's expression changed violently as well. He suddenly squatted down and used his feet to support himself from the ground. At the same time, he pressed his palms together. In an instant, the muscles on his body bulged up while his veins wriggled like fine snakes. It was an extremely shocking sight. Meanwhile, the dark-robed man slapped his palm down from midair. This palm strike was like an enormous axe, and the formidable might and force contained within it instantly tore through the air. Bai Zai swiftly raised his head, pressed his palms together, and formed a seal. Earthen yellow energy surged out from the center of his palm. Obviously, it was a martial technique. At the moment that the dark-robed man's palm descended, an ear-piercing explosion instantly resounded. In the blink of an eye, Bai Zai's figure was blasted over 20 m away. However, the dark-robed man didn't stop. His figure shook, and then he drifted towards Bai Zai like a gust of wind. On the other side, the white-robed man who stood before Mo Yunqi had suddenly vanished on the spot. Mo Yunqi's expression changed slightly. He tapped the ground lightly with the tip of his foot and glided over 30 m back. However, he just stopped when the white-robed man had arrived above him. The Ascension Realm. Mo Yunqi was shocked in his heart. He didn't dare act carelessly, and he retreated repeatedly. At the same time, a flying knife suddenly slashed out from his palm. The white-robed man's figure suddenly flashed in midair, and he dodged the flying knife. Meanwhile, Mo Yunqi was already 30 m away, and he'd pulled open the distance between him and the white-robed man. However, his expression was extremely solemn. The white-robed man didn't waste his breath at all, and he charged towards Mo Yunqi once more. Yi Xian withdrew his gaze from the distance, and his expression was extremely solemn as well. Because he noticed that Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi had been suppressed by those 2 people. Obviously, they'd investigated Bai Zai, Mo Yunqi, and him before they came here. Yi Xian gazed at Chen Yan, and he had no doubt that Qin Yan was absolutely not an ordinary person. Qin Yan suddenly charged forward, and at the same time, two rays of cold light shot towards Yi Xian. Dual blades. Yi Xian's reaction was extremely swift, and he'd smashed his fists against Qin Yan's attack at the same time. It was still the crushing fist, and it was the crushing fist that was enhanced with battle intent. At this moment, the trajectory of Qin Yan's dual blades suddenly changed, and his blades sliced towards Yi Xian's wrists at a strange angle. At almost the same time, Yi Xian suddenly spread his arms apart, and then he suddenly kicked towards Qin Yan. His leg was longer than his blades. As soon as Yi Xian launched his kick, Qin Yan immediately pulled back his sabers to defend himself. Bang! Qin Yan retreated a few meters with his blades, and before he could stop, Yi Xian had already charged in front of him, and then he smashed his fist towards Qin Yan again. Crushing fist. He only knew this low-level martial arts technique, but the might of this low-level martial arts technique wasn't weak, and a single punch directly crushed the air. Bang! Qin Yan was forced back once again, and Yi Xian pressed forward once more. In an instant, Qin Yan was directly suppressed by Yi Xian, suppressed by his fists. At this moment, Yi Xian was like a small mountain in front of Qin Yan. The strength of his punches was greater than the previous, and his battle intent was also stronger with each punch. Using force to suppress others. Bang! 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 Qin Yan retreated repeatedly. The current him couldn't even unsheath his saber, and he could only passively defend. His entire body was already enveloped by Yi Xian's force. To be precise, it was fist force. Originally, Yi Xian's fists didn't have any force, but after this period of frenzied mountain bombardment, his fists gradually gained their own force. In addition to his battle intent, a low-level human rank martial arts technique was forcefully beaten into the feeling of a superior grade spirit rank martial arts technique. In a certain courtyard. Opposite Old Man Ji, Li Xuanzang retracted his gaze and chuckled. What a great battle intent. He comprehended battle intent at such a young age. Even in the inner court, his foundations are top. What a pity, what a pity. He repeatedly said that it was a pity. This was because this youth was originally going to join their Kuraki college. If Yi Xian joined Kuraki college, it would naturally be another genius for Kuraki college to suck up to. Opposite Li Xuanzang, Old Man Ji was about to speak when Li Xuanzang suddenly said with a smile, "Actually, there's nothing to be pitted about. Not being able to join Kuraki college is his loss. Moreover, he's just a genius. We can just kill him." As he spoke, he looked at Old Man Ji. "What do you think?" Old Man Ji glanced at Li Xuanzang. "Geniuses who don't join Kuraki college will all end up like this, right?" Li Xuanzang smiled. "If he's not one of us, then he's an enemy." As he spoke, he turned to look at the back mountain. The three of them are not bad, especially that battle intent youth, Yi Xian. It's a pity that he chose the wrong side. Old Man Ji sneered. "It seems like you guys don't want him." Li Xuanzang's expression gradually turned cold. "I'd rather Kuraki college betray everyone in the world, but whoever dares to betray Kuraki college will die a horrible death." Conceited? No, to him, this was confidence. And Kuraki college also had this confidence. Old Man Ji lay on the chair, drinking wine with a smile on his face. Once upon a time, Zhanglan College was this arrogant. No, it was even more arrogant. But now, in the back mountain, the battle was still ongoing. Bang! Along with an explosion, a figure was directly sent flying. This figure was precisely Qin Yan. Yi Xian was about to continue attacking, but at this moment, his expression suddenly changed. A sword had silently appeared at the back of his neck. It was a good sword. It was supposed to be a one-on-one duel, but someone suddenly launched a sneak attack. In addition, the sword was extremely fast. Yi Xian couldn't dodge in time and allowed the sword to pierce the back of his neck. In the courtyard, old man Ji suddenly stood up. He stared at Li Xuanzang. "You're playing dirty." Li Xuanzang stood up and smiled. "From today onwards, everyone will only know one outcome for Dao Yi, and that is that all of your Tsanglan College students will be killed. Everyone will only care about the outcome and not the process. It's over." After saying that, he turned to leave. At this moment, both of them suddenly turned to look at the back mountain. At the back mountain, when the sword pierced the back of Yi Xian's neck, Yi Xian was unharmed. On the contrary, the sword turned into motes of energy and entered Yi Xian's body. The invincible sword body technique used one's body to forge a sword. As long as the sword that injured him wasn't of a higher level than the sword in his body, he would be immune to it and absorb it. The moment the sword energy was absorbed by Yi Xian, a terrifying aura suddenly swept out from Yi Xian's body. The aura of the Qi controlling realm. P.S. 3 things. First, why does everyone want to block my card? You can block my card for 100 vertical coins. Let me see how many friends you have. Second, for those who haven't bookmarked this book, please bookmark it. That means adding it to your bookshelf. It's also convenient. You'll be able to see it when you go online. Also, tickets. Asking for tickets. Chapter 49. How is this possible? In the courtyard, Li Xuanzang stared at the back mountain with a trace of disbelief in his eyes. The sword entered the body, but it was absorbed. Impossible. Could this be the legendary innate sword body? At this point, his pupils suddenly constricted. According to the legends, there were some special physiques, and the innate sword body was one of them. It could swallow swords. People with this kind of physique could be said to be natural swordsmen. And this kind of physique was extremely rare. But once it appeared, it was definitely a heaven-defying existence. At the back mountain. In the instant that Yi Xian broke through to the Qi-controlling realm, he turned around and threw a punch. Compared to before, this punch was at least twice as powerful. This was the benefit of breaking through. Bang! In front of Yi Xian, a figure retreated over 10 feet. At this moment, Yi Xian had a clear look at the person who had launched a sneak attack on him. It was a man in a tight black robe, about 20 years old, with a cold look in his eyes. Obviously, he was a sword cultivator. Moreover, he might be a little bit away from reaching the great swordsman. Because at that moment, Yi Xian felt a faint sword aura in the sword. The black-robed man stared at Yi Xian. "How could you swallow my sword?" Yi Xian's expression was quite ferocious. "We agreed to fight one-on-one, but you played this kind of trick. Die." As his voice fell, he directly rushed out. At the same time, a sword appeared in his palm. Ling Xiao's sword. When Yi Xian reached the Qi-controlling realm, he could already control Qi. Therefore, as soon as the Ling Xiao sword appeared, wisps of sword aura constantly emitted from the sword. Sword aura. The symbol of the great swordsman. All the students of Kuraki Academy were shocked and they witnessed this scene. The black-robed man opposite Yi Xian also had a face full of disbelief. "Great swordsman, you actually reached the great swordsman. Although he was only a short distance away from becoming the great swordsman, this short distance could trap him for 10 or 20 years, or even longer." The black-robed man didn't have much time to think because Yi Xian had already arrived in front of him, and Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. As soon as the sword descended, numerous rays of sword light shot out like sharp arrows. The black-robed man's expression changed drastically. He stomped his right foot and used the force from the ground to retreat explosively. However, he was still too slow, and a few strands of sword light directly pierced through his chest. Chi 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 chi. The black-robed man staggered and fell to the ground, blood spurting out from his chest. As soon as Yi Xian stopped, his expression changed slightly, and he swiftly moved to the side. Meanwhile, a white shadow attacked him. It was the white-clothed man who had just fought with Mo Yinqi. At this moment, he obviously wanted to save the black-robed man. Yi Xian was expressionless. Holding the long sword in his hand, he thrust it forward. A strand of sword light flickered at the tip of his sword. The white-clothed man's pupils constricted slightly, and then his hands suddenly trembled violently. A powerful strand of blue energy swept out from within him and formed a blue barrier. However, it wasn't able to stop Yi Xian's attack. Yi Xian's sword sliced through the blue barrier, but it stopped when it was just a few inches away from the center of the white-clothed man's forehead. Because the white-clothed man's hands had clamped down tightly onto Yi Xian's sword. At this moment, a strand of light blue flames emanated from the white-clothed man's hands, and it was exactly these flames that had resisted the sword light emanated by Yi Xian's sword. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly pressed forward and kicked the white-clothed man. The white-clothed man reacted extremely quickly, and he immediately let go of Yi Xian's sword and pressed it down. Bang! Yi Xian and the white-clothed man retreated explosively by over 10 m at the same time. Yi Xian had just stopped when Mo Yunqi and Bai Zai arrived on his left and right. At this moment, Bai Zai's upper body was covered in red palm prints, and it was especially so for his chest. It had sunk in severely, and it looked rather horrifying. Mo Yunqi wasn't much better off. His entire right arm had been completely fractured, and he couldn't move it at all. Moreover, blood was still flowing from the corners of his mouth. Obviously, he was heavily injured. As for the white-clothed man and the black-clothed man, they weren't injured at all. At this moment, the gazes of the white-clothed man and the black-clothed man descended onto Yi Xian, and they were about to attack. Meanwhile, an old man suddenly appeared before Yi Xian's group of 3. It was Old Man Ji. Old Man Ji had just descended to the ground when Li Xuanzang appeared before him. Old Man Ji gulped down a mouthful of wine, and then he looked at Li Xuanzang. How about this? I'll let you kill these 3 little fellows. Do you want to kill them? Li Xuanzang narrowed his eyes. He naturally knew what Old Man Ji meant. If he killed Yi Xian's group of 3, then Old Man Ji would definitely fight to the death. And for an expert of Old Man Ji's level, if he acted recklessly, Kuraki College would definitely suffer a heavy blow. Especially if he attacked the younger generation, Kuraki College had no confidence in protecting the younger generation. Such an expert was very difficult to stop. A moment later, Li Xuanzang suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. You're really surprising, but it doesn't matter. Next year, there will definitely be your corpse on Song Mountain's Xiao Dao. With that, he turned and left with the Kuraki College students. After Li Xuanzang and the others left, Old Man Ji turned to look at Yi Xian's group of 3. Do you know who the white-clothed man and the black-clothed man were? Yi Xian's group of 3 shook their heads. Li Xuanzang said indifferently, they are 2 of the 3 great geniuses of Kuraki College's inner courtyard. You should be glad that the other one didn't come today. Otherwise, would be collecting your corpses right now. Yi Xian's group of 3 fell silent. Old Man Ji continued, those 2 just now didn't use their full strength, but the 3 of you basically did. I let them come up because I want you to see how weak your current strength is compared to Kuraki College's. Just like what that old fart said, if you don't work hard, your corpses will really be hanging on Song Mountain's Xiao Dao in a year's time. At that time, the old man won't even be able to collect your corpses. With that, he turned around and left. However, he stopped after a few steps. That's right. Those 2 just now aren't the best in Kuraki College. The best are Fenju and Bei Chen. With your current strength, if you were to face them, you would definitely die. In the field, Yi Xian's group of 3 fell silent. Their expressions were solemn because they knew that Old Man Ji wasn't trying to scare them. They had already seen the strength of the white-clothed man and the black-clothed man. Very terrifying. Even Yi Xian, who had already reached the qi-resisting realm, didn't have the confidence to say that he would definitely be able to defeat them unless he used one sword to decide life and death. And those 2 weren't even the strongest in Kuraki College. A sense of crisis. This time, all three of them felt a sense of danger. Before this, the three of them were carefree. Even when they cultivated, they were forced to cultivate by Old Man Ji. There were very few voluntary parts. But now, the three of them were very clear that if they didn't become stronger, their corpses would definitely be hung on the road in the future. Even Yi Xian felt danger. No matter what happened in the past, he had to admit that he was now a student of Zhanglan College. He had to bear the grudges between Zhanglan College and Kuraki College even if he didn't want to. Moreover, when Old Man Ji saved his sister, he also promised Old Man Ji that he would do his best to fight against Kuraki College and bring back the corpses from Xiaodao. Cultivate. The three of them silently left the field and began to cultivate on their own. Yi Xian was still blasting the mountain. After the battle just now, he had some enlightenment. This time, he wasn't just blasting the mountain. After adding battle intent, he tried to make his fists have momentum. Fist momentum. This was definitely the reason why Old Man Ji wanted him to blast the mountain. Punch, punch, punch. 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 The momentum of one punch could split the earth and shatter the mountain. After understanding this, the power and momentum of Yi Xian's punches became stronger and stronger. Of course, he also paid the price. Both of his hands were already badly mutilated. At night, Yi Xian was exhausted and sprawled out in front of the small mountain. He lay on the ground and looked at the stars in the sky, gasping for breath. Now, he didn't just feel tired, he also felt good. Extremely good. He felt that after venting out all the energy in his body, the feeling was extremely satisfying. As if he thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly sat up. He opened his palm and a sword floated in his palm. Ling Xiao's sword. At this moment, Ling Xiao's sword was a little different than before. He couldn't describe this difference, he could only feel it. According to his guess, it should be because he had devoured that sword before. That sword's level wasn't low, it should be a spirit sword. Of course, it was definitely not as good as this Ling Xiao sword. Otherwise, that sword would have directly taken his life. The core of his invincible sword body was the sword. The stronger the sword in his dantian, the stronger his cultivation technique would be, and he could use this cultivation technique to devour even more swords. Sword. Thinking of this, Yi Xian seemed to have thought of something. He scanned his surroundings and seeing that there was no one around, he immediately entered the prison pagoda. In the endless starry sky, Yi Xian stood under the pagoda. He raised his head and looked at the top of the pagoda. At the top of it, there were 3 swords. From his angle, he could only roughly see the 3 swords. He wanted to take a closer look, but it was a pity that he hadn't reached the airborne realm and could fly in the air. Therefore, he could only look from afar. Looking at the 3 swords, Yi Xian's eyes were burning. His intuition told him that if he could use these 3 swords as his dantian, there wouldn't be any sword in the world that he couldn't absorb. At this moment, the prison pagoda suddenly trembled. Yi Xian was stunned, then hurriedly entered the first level. He looked around. "Senior?" The mysterious woman didn't answer. Yi Xian frowned. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly raised his head. There was a moment of silence. Thump, above Yi Xian's head, footsteps could be heard. When he heard the footsteps, Yi Xian was stunned. At first, he thought that he had heard wrongly, but very quickly, thump 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 thump, the footsteps on the second level were getting louder and louder. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Who? No one answered, but the footsteps were getting louder and louder. In the end, the entire first level of the prison pagoda shook. Chapter 50. Panic. At this moment, Yi Xian was panicking. This was because the mysterious woman had told him that the second level was not a kind person. Since it was not a kind person, it would be very difficult to communicate with them. This meant that once they came out, they would not give him a chance to speak. "Senior?" Yi Xian took 2 steps back and looked around. Senior? Are you still there? The mysterious woman still did not reply. Yi Xian was prepared to escape. At this moment, the prison pagoda suddenly trembled. Soon, the footsteps stopped and the entrance to the second level returned to normal. Yi Xian was stunned and hurriedly asked, Senior? Did you attack? Still, no one replied. Yi Xian wanted to ask something else, but at this moment, a white piece of paper suddenly floated out from the entrance to the second level. Paper. Yi Xian was stunned. Then, he took 2 steps forward. At this moment, the piece of paper floated in front of him. There was a smiley face on the paper. Below the smiley face were 2 paw prints, which looked like cat paws. Yi Xian, at this moment, another piece of paper floated out from the entrance to the second level and slowly floated in front of Yi Xian. This time, there was a wronged face on the paper, and below the face, there were also 2 small paw prints. Suddenly, another piece of paper floated out. Soon, it floated in front of Yi Xian. This time, there was a crying face on the paper, and below the crying face, there were also 2 small paw prints. Yi Xian looked up at the second level. Do you want me to let you out? Just as he said this, there was a soft sound from the top of the tower. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. I can't let you out for now. After a moment of silence, suddenly, boom. The entire first and second levels of the prison pagoda violently shook, and the powerful impact instantly sent Yi Xian flying. Bang! Yi Xian crashed into the wall of the pagoda and howled in pain. At this moment, he felt as if his limbs were about to fall apart. However, before he could get up, an evil aura suddenly appeared on the first level. This aura was so evil that it caused Yi Xian's expression to change greatly. He hurriedly retreated out of the tower. Just as the aura was about to spill out of the tower, a sword in the sky above the world prison tower suddenly trembled slightly. Boom! The evil aura was instantly shattered, and the prison pagoda returned to normal. After a while, Yi Xian saw that the world prison pagoda had calmed down. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. Not daring to stay any longer, he hurriedly left the prison pagoda. In reality, Yi Xian took a deep breath. Find the Tao Law. Only at this moment did he truly realize how terrifying this world prison pagoda was. This was only the 2nd floor, 3rd floor, 4th floor. Just what kind of people were imprisoned here? He had to find the Tao laws. After Yi Xian calmed down, he washed up and returned to his courtyard. At the entrance of the courtyard, he saw a petite figure sitting in front of the stone steps. It was Yi Ling. Just like before, no matter how long he went out, when he returned, he would see his little sister Yi Ling waiting for him. Yi Xian walked in front of Yi Ling. At this moment, Yi Ling was already asleep. He gently picked up Yi Ling. At this moment, Yi Ling subconsciously hugged him tightly, burying her head in his chest. Brother, Yi Xian smiled, then carried Yi Ling back to her room. After covering Yi Ling with a blanket, Yi Xian left the room. Not far away from the room, Old Man Ji had appeared at the entrance. Old Man Ji said, "Come with me." After saying that, he turned and walked outside. Yi Xian followed. On the way, Old Man Ji gulped down a mouthful of wine and said, "The matter with Kuraki Academy has temporarily come to an end. However, when you leave the mountain in the future, you should be careful. Right now, there is a lot of resentment in Kuraki Academy. They all want revenge, but it has been suppressed by Kuraki Academy. Of course, they don't want to stop. They are waiting for Fenju and Bei Chen to return. They are not at Kuraki Academy?" Yi Xian asked. Old Man Ji said indifferently, "If they were at Kuraki Academy, the ones who came to challenge you that day wouldn't have been those 3 geniuses. Kuraki Academy doesn't act, but once they do, they will definitely kill." Yi Xian fell silent. Old Man Ji said again, "With me here, Kuraki Academy won't dare to send experts to assassinate you, but that is not absolute. So, when you are outside, you must be careful. Don't be careless and get yourself killed. Yi Xian nodded, understood. Old Man Ji suddenly stopped. There's still half a month before you go to Two World Mountain, right? Yi Xian looked at Old Man Ji. Does the dean know? Old Man Ji nodded. In the country of Jiang, there are only 2 or 3 people who are qualified. It seems that Enlace really thinks highly of you since she gave it to you. Yi Xian didn't say anything. Old Man Ji hesitated for a moment, then said, Kid, you're not an ordinary person, but that Enlace is even more so. Kuraki Academy is so domineering, but Enlancio said she wouldn't join, and Kuraki Academy didn't even dare to fart. From this, you should be able to see how terrifying she is. Yi Xian smiled. Senior, what are you trying to say? Old Man Ji said indifferently, You know very well what I'm trying to say. Yi Xian smiled. The dean is afraid that I will bring trouble to myself if I get close to her, right? Old Man Ji nodded. Enlace doesn't have any ill intentions towards you, but that might not be the case for the people behind her. It's best to stay away from her, or wait until you have absolute strength before approaching her. It's good for you and for her. Yi Xian shook his head. Old Man Ji looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said softly, We know each other, and we're friends. We don't mix in anything else. Old Man Ji shook his head. You're too idealistic. You don't mix in with her, but don't tell me others don't mix in as well. Or do you think that the world is a beautiful place, and that everyone is reasonable? Yi Xian shrugged. If her family tries to stop me, I'll fight them. I'll beat them until they don't dare to stop me. Old Man Ji gave Yi Xian a thumbs up. You've got guts, but unfortunately, that's all. Yi Xian was a little speechless. What else can I do? I'll tell Missin that I'm afraid of her family, and we can't be friends anymore. Old Man Ji looked straight at Yi Xian. Do you really only want to be friends with her, kid? Don't you have other thoughts? Yi Xian blinked. I don't know what you're talking about. With that, he walked into the distance. Old Man Ji sighed, and took a step forward. This step brought him to Yi Xian's side, and he said, This is your choice, I won't say anything more. Finally, when you go to the Two World Mountain, you need to be careful of 3 things. The first is obviously Kuraki Academy. The 2 wretched geniuses and 3 prodigies of Kuraki Academy might go. If you come across them, don't try to be brave. You still need to run. The second is to be careful of the people from the Tang Empire. The Tang Empire will definitely send people there as well. The relationship between our Jiang Empire and the Tang Empire is like the relationship between Kuraki Academy and Artsung Lan Academy. With that, he paused, and continued, Third, you have to be careful of some geniuses from other countries. When you're outside, killing and robbing others is a common occurrence. You have to know that many geniuses rose up by stepping on the corpses of other geniuses. I know you've been fighting and killing since you were young, but the law of survival is even crueler in the outside world. Yi Xian nodded. I'll keep that in mind. Old Man Ji took a sip of wine, and continued, The fire spirit in your sister's body is being devoured, and it won't last long. When we go to the Sword Master's abode, it's located in a volcanic region. If there's a chance, find some fire-attributed items, the hotter the better. Yi Xian bowed slightly. My sister is here, so I'll have to trouble you, Principal. Don't worry, she's safe here, Old Man Ji said. He then stopped. Before you go to Two World Mountain, you have to cultivate your fist force. Your force is still not enough. Fist force, fist force, fist force. Before you punch, your aura has already been released. That's the true fist force. As for your own battle intent, don't be too hasty. There's still a process between you and a Martial Dao Grandmaster, and this process needs to be completed slowly. Martial Dao can't be rushed, it's best if everything comes naturally. Yi Xian bowed deeply to Old Man Ji. I've learned a lot. Old Man Ji nodded. Go back and cultivate. Cultivating fist force will be of great help to you when you go to Two World Mountain. Yi Xian bowed again. then turned around and left. Looking at Yi Xian's departing figure, Old Man Ji said softly, "He's not in a rush. He's a good seedling." After saying that, he gulped down a mouthful of wine, then turned around and disappeared into the distance. At the back of the mountain, Yi Xian arrived in front of the small mountain again, and very soon, there was a series of rumbling sounds coming from the back of the mountain. Under the waterfall, Bei Zhe was crazily swimming against the flow of the waterfall. Within the mountain, Mo Yunqi was madly fleeing, and this time, it wasn't just one demon wolf chasing him, but two. Bitter cultivation. After fighting with the students from Kuraki Academy, Yi Xian and the other two began to cultivate crazily. This was because the three of them had seen the strength of the students from Kuraki Academy, and in the future, they would definitely have to face them. No one wanted to lose, nor did they want to die. Cultivation. Madly cultivating. In the following period of time, Yi Xian and the other two began to cultivate crazily. Apart from eating and sleeping, the three of them spent all their time cultivating. This was especially so for Mo Yunqi and Bei Zhe. When the two of them had fought with the students from Kuraki Academy, they had been completely suppressed by the other party, and they had not been able to fight back. The two of them were proud people, and they did not want something like that to happen again. Half a month later, under the bitter cultivation, there were naturally some results. Mo Yunqi could already deal with the attacks of the two demon wolves with ease, and he could even release flying knives to counterattack at any time. As for Bei Zhe, under the waterfall, he no longer needed the chains, and he could swim against the flow of the waterfall. His body had gone through a huge change compared to before, and it was not just his body, but his strength had also changed greatly. As for Yi Xian, in front of the small mountain, Yi Xian's eyes slightly changed, and his whole body was like a statue. After an unknown amount of time, his eyes suddenly opened, and his right hand clenched into a fist. Boom! A formless power swept out from his body. In the distance, bang! A huge rock that was several zhang wide suddenly shattered. Power. Fist power. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly fiercely punched the ground. Boom! With Yi Xian as the center, the ground within a radius of several zhang instantly exploded, and countless gravel shot out in all directions like sharp arrows. Yi Xian stood up, and he looked at his own fist, and his eyes were filled with excitement. I'm really King powerful. At this time, there was a sudden change in the field, Pa. With a loud slap, Yi Xian's whole body directly flew to the mountain wall several zhang away. Bang! The mountain wall trembled slightly, and countless gravel fell along with Yi Xian. After a moment, Yi Xian slowly got up, and at this time, there was a small claw mark on the right side of his face. Chapter 51. Yi Xian was completely dumbfounded. Who hit him? He jumped up, took out his Ling Xiao sword, and scanned his surroundings vigilantly. However, he did not discover anything. He retracted his gaze and looked at the Ling Xiao sword. From the body of the Ling Xiao sword, he saw a small claw mark on the right side of his face. When he saw this small claw mark, his face immediately darkened. He recognized this claw mark. It was exactly the same as the claw mark on the paper that floated out from the second floor. That guy could come out? Thinking of this, Yi Xian immediately broke out in a cold sweat. He hurriedly returned to the prison pagoda. However, the prison pagoda was incomparably quiet. There was no movement at all. The upper floor was also incomparably quiet. Yi Xian glanced at the entrance of the second floor with a rather strange expression. He could be sure that the one who hit him was this guy on the second floor. However, he could do nothing about it. Go to the second floor and fight with him alone? Wasn't that courting death? He couldn't afford to offend him. He couldn't afford to offend him. Yi Xian touched his burning right cheek, then turned around and left the prison pagoda. At noon. Inside the Azure Water Palace, everyone sat around the table. On the table, there were more than 10 dishes. There were meat and vegetables, and the aroma assailed their nostrils. This time, Jianji didn't move his chopsticks. He just licked his chopsticks, not caring about his image at all. Everyone was already used to it. At this moment, Old Man Ji suddenly said, "After this meal, it's time for you guys to leave." Leave? Yi Xian looked at Old Man Ji. They are also going to Two Boundary Mountain? Old Man Ji shook his head. I will bring the two of them to a place to train alone. Yi Xian nodded, then looked at Mo Yunqi and Bai Zai. Take care. Bai Zai nodded. You too. Mo Yunqi chuckled. Next time we meet, let's spar. Yi Xian smiled. Just as he was about to speak, Yi Ling suddenly snorted. You definitely can't beat my brother. Mo Yunqi rolled his eyes. Yes, your brother is the strongest. He finally understood. In this Tsanglan Academy, the last person to offend was this little girl. This was because this little girl had a very high status in everyone's hearts. Other than being able to cook, she also knew how to get wine for Geezer Ji and make food for Ji Anji in the middle of the night. She especially knew how to wash their clothes. Even Bai Zai was very fond of her. If he offended her, it would be equivalent to offending everyone else. Yi Ling grinned and put a piece of lean meat into Yi Xian's bowl. Brother, eat. Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head, his eyes filled with love. Mo Yunqi suddenly shook his head and sighed. Alas, someone else's sister. Everyone looked at each other and smiled. An hour later, Old Man Ji brought Mo Yunqi and Bai Zai down the mountain. At the foot of the mountain, Mo Yunqi waved at Yi Xian. See you next time, let's have a good fight. Yi Xian smiled. All right. Bai Zai bowed slightly to Yi Xian. Take care. After saying that, he turned around and quickly followed Old Man Ji, who was walking at the front with Mo Yunqi. Yi Xian pulled Yi Ling and turned to walk in front of Ji Anji. He looked straight at Ji Anji. Is my sister safe here? Ji Anji looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian also looked at her and did not speak. At this moment, Ji Anji suddenly moved sideways. In the next moment, a blade as thin as a cicada's wing appeared in her hand. In the blink of an eye, she was already 100 feet away. As soon as she stopped, the ground behind her cracked open. It was so deep that one could not see the bottom. Not only that, but there was a mysterious power lingering in the crack. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's pupils shrank and he was extremely shocked. Because it was an artistic conception. Blade intent. This foodie in front of him was actually so powerful. Now that he thought about it, he felt a lingering fear. Because this foodie in front of him had almost killed him with a blade. At this moment, Yi Ling walked in front of Yi Xian. She took out a bag and handed it to Yi Xian. Brother, there's a pair of shoes in here. I just hooked them and some dry food. I made them. When you go out, fight less and don't hurt yourself. Also, I'll be good here. Don't worry about me. Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. Wait for me to come back. After saying that, he carried the bag and turned to walk into the distance. He was not a pretentious person. Although he could not bear to part with his sister, a real man's ambition was to travel far and wide. When there was something that he had to do, he should do it decisively and not procrastinate. Under Yi Ling's gaze, Yi Xian's back view became more and more blurry. Yi Ling did not cry. She just watched until Yi Xian completely disappeared in the distance. She did not look away. After a long time, she turned around and walked to Ji Anji's side. Then, she held Ji Anji's hand. Sister Ji, let's go. Ji Anji glanced at Yi Ling. Don't worry. Yi Ling grinned. He told me to wait for him to come back, so he will definitely come back. Big brother has never gone back on his word when he promised me. Ji Anji nodded. She turned to look into the distance and seemed to think of something. She shook her head slightly. Not a bad man. Unfortunately, he likes men. After Yi Xian left the mountain, he directly went to the cloud ship base of the Drunken Immortal restaurant outside the imperial capital. He was going to Borderline Mountain, so he naturally had to take a cloud ship. However, as soon as he left the city, a group of people rushed out of the city. From their clothes, it was clear that they were students of Kuraki Academy. Ever since Yi Xian killed a student of Kuraki Academy, the students of Kuraki Academy had been thinking about revenge at all times. However, they still had some misgivings. They did not dare to directly go to Tsanglan Academy to find Yi Xian's group of 3. However, they did not give up. Instead, they constantly sent people to stand guard at the foot of Tsanglan Academy's mountain. Now that Yi Xian had left the mountain, they received the news and immediately rushed over. Yi Xian stopped in his tracks. Seeing Yi Xian stop in his tracks, the group of Kuraki Academy students also stopped in their tracks. Yi Xian turned around and looked at the group of Kuraki Academy students, one-on-one. One-on-one. Everyone was stunned. So direct? At this moment, a student of Kuraki Academy stood out. He slowly walked in front of Yi Xian and fiercely said, "Yi Xian, you killed a student of my Kuraki Academy. Today, at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Bang! The man hadn't even finished speaking when his figure was blasted over 10 m away. He was directly crushed. All the students of Kuraki Academy were stunned when they witnessed this scene. He's so ferocious. The students glanced at each other and were about to attack together. However, right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "There are so many of you, so why don't all of you attack together? In any case, your Kuraki Academy is shameless. Come on, all of you attack together." The expressions of the students of Kuraki Academy instantly became slightly unsightly when they heard this. Attack together? They'd originally intended to attack together, but after Yi Xian spoke like this, they didn't dare to attack together. Because this was in broad daylight. If they attacked together, even if they won, it wouldn't be good for their reputation. When he saw that the students of Kuraki Academy didn't attack, Yi Xian pointed at them and said, "All of you are just a bunch of little brothers." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. The expressions of the students of Kuraki Academy who stood behind Yi Xian were unsightly to the extreme, but none of them dared to attack. They weren't idiots. Based on how Yi Xian attacked earlier, none of them were a match for Yi Xian at all. Continuing to fight would only be asking to be humiliated. Simply speaking, they'd realized a fact, and it was that only the inner court students could deal with Yi Xian. Just like that, Yi Xian vanished into the distance under the gazes of the students of Kuraki Academy. An hour later, Yi Xian ascended the cloud vessel. This time, he was staying in a special classroom. It was naturally because of the violet card. With the violet card, one could stay in a special classroom for free. Yi Xian naturally wouldn't refuse such a good thing because he would be a bastard if he didn't take advantage of it. After the cloud vessel started moving, Yi Xian arrived on the deck. "It's you." At this moment, a slightly familiar voice resounded in Yi Xian's ears. Yi Xian turned around and saw a woman in a red dress standing not too far away from him. She was extremely beautiful, especially her slender figure that made one want to embrace her and play with her. That woman was none other than Immerse Suiqing, who'd had a conflict with him. There was a man standing beside Immerse Suiqing. The man wore gorgeous embroidered clothes, a golden crown, and a jade belt. His face was like white jade, and he was extremely handsome. The man's gaze descended onto Yi Xian, and he ceaselessly sized him up. Yi Xian glanced at Immerse Suiqing before withdrawing his gaze, and then he walked to the bow of the vessel. As he watched the scenery below grow smaller and smaller, his yearning for the legendary sword immortal grew stronger. Riding a sword through the world. That was the dream of every swordsman. Seeing that Yi Xian was ignoring her, Immerse Suiqing's expression immediately turned cold. Ever since she was born, no matter where she went, she'd always been the focus of attention. When had she ever been ignored like this? She walked to Yi Xian's side, and Yi Xian turned around to look at her with a slight frown. The woman before him was indeed very beautiful. Any man would probably like to look at her, but he really didn't like her. It should be said that he hated her. He really hated this kind of disrespectful and opinionated woman. And Lanxiu was still the best. Thinking of that woman in a snow-white dress, Yi Xian's frown relaxed, and a trace of a smile appeared on his face. Yi Xian. At this moment, Mo Suiqing suddenly smiled and said, "Why? Do you dislike me that much?" Yi Xian shook his head. "Miss Mo, people of different principles cannot make plans together." Mo Suiqing's eyes narrowed slightly. "I heard that you joined Sung Lan Academy." Yi Xian nodded. "Congratulations." Mo Suiqing smiled. Her smile was very bright, but her words were slightly harsh. Yi Xian nodded and didn't say anything else. He didn't want to say anything, so he turned around and walked to the other side. Mo Suiqing had no intention of letting it go, so she immediately followed him. The competition between Sung Lan Academy and Sung Lan Academy will be held in a year. Yi Xian didn't answer her. Mo Suiqing continued, "I will definitely be there to watch it." Yi Xian glanced at Mo Suiqing, and then he walked to the other side. Mo Suiqing's expression instantly darkened when she saw this, and she seemed to have thought of something. She glanced at the man beside her and smiled. "Brother Mu, look, she doesn't like me at all." The man glanced at Yi Xian, then at Mo Suiqing, and he didn't say anything. He wasn't stupid, and he naturally understood that the woman beside him wanted to use him as a tool. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned around to look at Mo Suiqing. "Can't you tell that I really dislike you? Can you not King come near me? If you come near me again, I'm really afraid that I won't be able to stop myself from punching you to death." Mo Suiqing. P.S. Thank you to the readers for putting up signs, tipping, and voting. Thank you for your support. I also want to thank my old friends who went to other book review sections to help me promote it. I still want to ask for a wave of tickets, and also ask for everyone's help to promote it and collect it. New book is not easy. Chapter 52. Mo Suiqing glared at Yi Xian. She clenched her fists and her entire body was trembling. The man beside her looked at Yi Xian in shock. Yi Xian turned to leave after he finished speaking. At that moment, Mo Suiqing suddenly shouted, "How dare you humiliate me!" Yi Xian stopped in his tracks. He turned around and walked in front of Mo Suiqing. "Humiliate you? I've already let you off twice. You're the one who's chasing after me, all right?" As he spoke, he pinched Mo Suiqing's cheeks. "Miss Mo, ask yourself honestly. Apart from your face and your identity, what else do you have? Or rather, without this face, without the identity of the Mo family, do you think there will still be men around you? They surround you. Do you think they really like you? No, they only like your face and identity. Without your face and identity, you're worthless in their eyes." With that, he let go of her and said, "You think you're toying with those men, but forgive me for being blunt. Is there any meaning in toying with those men? Is there any meaning? Any man with a little bit of intelligence wouldn't be toyed with by you. Miss N is right. Your Mo family is a big family after all. Don't you think you're embarrassing your family by doing these kinds of things all day long? Think about it. Also, don't try to scheme against me. I don't want to be hunted down by your Mo family after I kill you with a single punch." With that, he turned around and left. Mo Suiqing clenched her fists tightly. Her expression was cold and no one knew what she was thinking. Yi Xian returned to his private room. He didn't particularly hate Mo Suiqing, but he didn't have a good impression of her either. She was too self-righteous. Without thinking about Mo Suiqing, he returned to the prison pagoda. "Senior?" Yi Xian said in a low voice after glancing around. The surroundings were extremely quiet. The mysterious woman still didn't reply. Yi Xian's expression sank. He was a little flustered without the mysterious woman around. Right at this moment, a piece of paper suddenly floated out from the entrance to the second level. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he saw this piece of paper. It's here again. Soon, that piece of paper floated in front of him. On it was a calm face. It was very calm, and it was impossible to tell whether it was happy or angry. And under this calm face, there was a claw mark. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. He scanned his surroundings and hurriedly exited the world prison pagoda. What kind of existence was imprisoned on the second floor? Yi Xian was filled with doubts. However, no matter what was locked up, there was one thing he was sure of, and that was that it was definitely not something he could fight against right now. Hurry up and find that whatever Tao law. Yi Xian made up his mind. In the following time, Yi Xian began to cultivate crazily. Now that he was in the qi-controlling realm, he had yet to fully comprehend this realm, especially the application of sword qi and sword ray. Unfortunately, the mysterious woman had not spoken recently, so he could only rely on himself to slowly explore the application of sword qi and sword ray. Something worthy of mentioning was that it wasn't so difficult for him to execute determine life and death with a swing of the sword now. Moreover, the might of determine life and death with a swing of the sword had increased greatly. His current determine life and death with a swing of the sword was entirely capable of killing a levitation realm expert. Moreover, determine life and death with a swing of the sword could be said to be his greatest killer move and trump card. In the following time, Yi Xian started to practice his sword and fist techniques like a madman. No matter if it was his sword or fist techniques, he didn't want to use any of them. Time passed very quickly. 2 days later, the cloud ship started to descend slowly. He'd arrived at Two World City. Yi Xian left the room and came to the deck of the cloud ship. He stood at the bow of the ship and looked down. Two World City was growing larger and larger. He was slightly surprised when he saw Two World City. Because there were soldiers standing on the walls of Two World City. Moreover, there were over 1,000 soldiers training below the city. Overall, the movements of these soldiers were neat and orderly, and they carried a murderous aura. It was obvious that they were sharp troops. In next to no time, the cloud ship stopped steadily in Two World City, and Yi Xian leaped off the cloud ship. Suddenly, a figure appeared before him. It was Immerse Qing. Yi Xian's brows knit together slightly, and he was about to speak when Immerse Qing spoke abruptly, "Remember this." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. How inexplicable. Yi Xian shook his head, and then he withdrew a map. Old Man Ji had given him this map before he came here, and it contained the exact location of the sword master's abode. It didn't take long for him to find it. Yi Xian didn't stay in the city, and he dashed directly out of the city and towards the mountain range on the right. It didn't take long for him to enter the boundless mountain range. He wasn't unfamiliar with mountains at all. Around 4 hours later, Yi Xian walked along the direction indicated on the map. The air grew hotter the deeper he went, and another 2 hours passed before Yi Xian stopped. 3 mountains stood in a triangular formation not too far away from him, and there was a gorge at the center. "I've arrived." Yi Xian was just about to continue forward and a shapeless pressure suddenly enveloped him. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly, and he glanced at the surroundings but didn't notice anyone. Proof of qualification. A voice suddenly resounded by Yi Xian's ear. Yi Xian hurriedly took out the jade pendant Lancio had given him, and he waved it around. In next to no time, the pressure vanished completely. Yi Xian continued forward, and it didn't take long for him to enter the gorge. At the moment he entered the gorge, the Lingxiao sword within him actually trembled and was about to charge out of his body. Yi Xian was shocked, and he hurriedly suppressed the Lingxiao sword. What's going on? Yi Xian's brows knit together tightly, and his heart was filled with bewilderment. You're here. Right at this moment, a voice suddenly resounded from Yi Xian's right. Yi Xian looked over and saw a woman standing on his right. The woman wore a silver dress, and there was a golden curved blade hanging from her waist. Ninth Princess. Yi Xian walked in front of the ninth princess, and asked in surprise, "You knew that I was coming?" The ninth princess sized up Yi Xian, and nodded, "Follow me." With that, she turned and walked to the side. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then followed. On the way, the ninth princess didn't speak, and Yi Xian couldn't help but ask, "You knew that I was coming?" "She is my close friend," the ninth princess replied. Enrich. Yi Xian understood. Needless to say, Enrich must have told the ninth princess about the jade pendant. Soon, under the ninth princess's lead, the two of them came to a dense forest. The ninth princess sat on the ground, and she signaled for Yi Xian to sit down as well. Yi Xian didn't hesitate, and directly sat on the ground. The ninth princess took a branch and drew a circle on the ground. This cave was left behind by the Azure World's Sword Master. As for who the Azure World's Sword Master is, I won't introduce him. In any case, he was a person who once stunned the entire Azure world. This cave was not left behind by him at his peak, but in his early years. Even so, its value is immeasurable. And this time, those who are participating in the development of this cave are the big shots, countries, and some sects in the mountains. With that, she paused for a moment, and looked at Yi Xian. No one force can monopolize this cave. Not a single power could monopolize this abode. Thus, in order to avoid a huge dispute, the higher-ups issued some qualification orders, allowing the younger generation of each power to enter and search for fortuitous encounters. In short, this time, not only the people from the country of Jiang are coming, but there are also geniuses from other countries, and some sect's disciples. This time, you will see the geniuses from the country of Jiang. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Are there people from Kuraki College coming too?" The ninth princess looked at Yi Xian. "Yes, but I don't know who will come this time." Yi Xian nodded, and didn't say anything else. Anyway, at most, they would just fight. As if knowing what Yi Xian was thinking, the ninth princess looked at him. "Remember, you are here to search for opportunities, not to fight and kill." Yi Xian chuckled, "I won't take the initiative to fight with them, I'm just afraid that they will hit me when they see me." "You also know about the matter between Songlan College and Kuraki College?" The ninth princess nodded. "We'll talk about it when the time comes." With that, she seemed to have thought of something, and suddenly looked up at Yi Xian. "If I remember correctly, you are a swordsman?" Yi Xian nodded. The ninth princess was silent for a moment, and then said, "Don't easily expose your identity as a swordsman later." "Why?" Yi Xian didn't understand. The ninth princess said in a deep voice, "This is the cave residence of the Firmament Sword Master, and the Firmament Sword Master is a swordsman. A swordsman coming here will definitely have some advantages. If you expose your identity as a swordsman, it is very likely that you will be targeted." With that said, she looked to the right. After entering, opportunities are not to be found, but to be snatched. Whoever snatches it will own it. Yi Xian was speechless. At this time, the ninth princess took out 2 green pills, and with a flick of her finger, one of them flew to Yi Xian. "Poison avoidance pill, just in case." Yi Xian nodded, and directly swallowed it. The ninth princess saw that Yi Xian ate it without any hesitation, and looked at Yi Xian. "You trust me so much?" Yi Xian said softly, "I trust her." Enrich. Since Enrich was the close friend of the ninth princess, there was no doubt that this person in front of him was absolutely trustworthy. The ninth princess looked at Yi Xian. "You like her?" Yi Xian was speechless. The ninth princess retracted her gaze, and then swallowed her poison avoidance pill. "Work hard." Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, suddenly, footsteps came from not far away. Yi Xian and the ninth princess turned to look at the source of the footsteps. It was a man in his 20s, burly, and had a beard on his face. Seeing the person who came, Yi Xian frowned, because the person in front of him was wearing the clothes of the Tang Empire. When he saw Yi Xian and the ninth princess, the burly man was slightly stunned. Obviously, he also came here by accident. He was about to leave, but at this moment, he suddenly looked at the ninth princess not far away, and his eyes narrowed slightly. Country of Jiang. The ninth princess retracted her gaze and leaned against a tree. The burly man glanced at the ninth princess, and the corners of his mouth suddenly curled up, and his smile was somewhat obscene. I like to sleep with the women of the Jiang Empire, it's comfortable. You. At this moment, Yi Xian, who was originally sitting on the ground, suddenly jumped up, and in the next moment, he rushed directly in front of the burly man like a cheetah pouncing on its prey. The latter's expression changed drastically. It was too late to retreat, and the burly man could only hurriedly throw a punch. At this moment, Yi Xian also threw a punch. Fist collapse. Not only was this punch mixed with battle intent, but it also contained a fist aura pressure. The two fists collided. Bang! Crack! The burly man's entire body was directly thrown out, and at the same time, his entire arm was directly fractured, turning into a strange shape. After sending the burly man flying with a punch, Yi Xian immediately rushed over. After a breath's time, Yi Xian carried the burly man who was constantly wailing in pain and arrived in front of the ninth princess. He kicked the burly man. Apologize. The ninth princess glanced at Yi Xian. Apologize for what? In the next moment, she suddenly pulled out the golden saber at her waist, and slashed at the burly man's throat. Chi! The burly man's head was directly separated from his neck. The ninth princess put away the golden saber, and she held the bloody head, then glanced at Yi Xian. You're not ruthless enough, learn. He should have companions. Let's go, I'll bring you to kill someone. Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 53. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. Am I not ruthless enough? In all fairness, he felt that he was ruthless enough. Of course, the ninth princess seemed to be a ruthless character as well. At this moment, the ninth princess, who was not far away, suddenly stopped. She turned around to look at Yi Xian. What are you waiting for? Let's go and kill someone. Yi Xian was speechless. Just like that, Yi Xian followed the ninth princess and walked into the distance. However, when he left, he searched the burly man's body and gained quite a lot. He obtained quite a few upper spiritual stones. Including the ones he had saved before, he now had a total of 15 upper spiritual stones. In addition, he also had about 100 gold coins. It was not a small amount of wealth. Under the ninth princess's lead, the two of them arrived at a ravine. In the ravine, Yi Xian saw two people. Judging from their attire, they were undoubtedly from the Tang Kingdom. There were some differences in the customs and attire between the Tang Kingdom and the Jiang Kingdom, especially their accents. In the distance, the two men were stunned when they saw the ninth princess and Yi Xian. They were from the Jiang Kingdom? Soon, their eyes fell on the bloody head in the ninth princess's hand. When they saw the head, their expressions instantly turned cold. At this moment, the ninth princess suddenly threw the head to one of the men. At the same time, she rushed out like a gust of wind. So fast. Yi Xian's pupils constricted slightly. The ninth princess's strength had greatly exceeded his expectations. Without thinking too much, he rushed out as well because one of the men was also rushing towards him. When he arrived in front of the man, Yi Xian punched out without thinking. Fist force. When he punched out, some of the stones around him directly exploded. When the man opposite Yi Xian sensed the power in Yi Xian's fist, he was shocked. He did not dare to be careless and quickly stopped. He half-squatted and suddenly crossed his arms. Crack. The ground beneath the man's feet cracked open. At the same time, the sleeves of the man's arms exploded apart. At this moment, his arms had actually turned crimson gold, and they were as hard as gold. At this moment, Yi Xian's fist arrived. Bang! Following the sound of an explosion, the man was pushed back several feet, and Yi Xian was also pushed back several feet. After Yi Xian stopped, he looked at his fist. His fist was red. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian narrowed his eyes slightly. As expected, none of the people who came were simple. Right at this moment, the man suddenly took a stride forward, and he directly arrived in front of Yi Xian. The man suddenly smashed his arms down towards Yi Xian, and then numerous explosions instantly resounded in the surroundings as soon as his arms descended. What terrifying strength! Yi Xian slowly clenched his right hand tightly, and the will to fight condensed on his fist. He was just about to attack when a shadow suddenly flashed in front of him. In the next moment, the man's head flew into the air. Yi Xian looked in front of him with astonishment. There was a woman standing in front of him. A silver dress and a golden saber. It was the 9th princess. 1 strike and 1 kill. Yi Xian's mind went blank. The 9th princess put her golden saber away, turned around, and walked over to Yi Xian. She just stared at Yi Xian. Why didn't you use your full strength? Yi Xian was speechless. The 9th princess stared straight at Yi Xian. You're a swordsman. You could have used your full strength to kill him in the shortest time possible, so why did you hold back? Do you know that if you don't end the battle as soon as possible, then it's very likely that you'll attract more enemies and be besieged by even more people? Yi Xian was silent. The 9th princess took another step forward. Her eyes were as sharp as knives, and her voice was a little colder. This isn't a place for you to train. Here, if you don't kill others, then others will kill you. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. I understand. The 9th princess said coldly, be serious. Yi Xian said seriously, I understand. The 9th princess nodded slightly, follow me. Yi Xian tidied up the spoils of war and obtained 5 top-grade spirit stones and more than 50 gold coins. Right now, he had 20 high-grade spirit stones and 150 gold coins. Looking at the small bag on his waist, Yi Xian smiled foolishly and hurriedly followed. Under the 9th princess's lead, the two of them came to a hidden cave. The 9th princess sat cross-legged on the ground and started a fire. Then, she took out a chicken and started roasting it. Yi Xian was dumbfounded because when they came, the 9th princess was empty-handed. The 9th princess glanced at Yi Xian. Why? Curious? Yi Xian nodded hurriedly. The 9th princess flashed a ring on her finger, a storage ring. It has its own space inside and can store some things, except for living things. Yi Xian blinked. Can I have a look? The 9th princess was generous. With a tap of her finger, the storage ring flew directly to Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the storage ring carefully, his eyes full of curiosity. How many things can be stored in it? The 9th princess said lightly, about the size of a room. Yi Xian was stunned, then asked, how much does it cost to buy one? The 9th princess glanced at Yi Xian. 500,000 gold coins. There's no market for it. 500,000. Yi Xian was stunned on the spot, then returned the ring to the 9th princess. 500,000 gold coins. What a joke, he couldn't afford it even if he sold himself. The 9th princess glanced at the storage ring, then said, if you want, I can give it to you. Yi Xian shook his head decisively. The 9th princess was a little surprised. Why? Yi Xian said, where there is gain, there must be loss. The 9th princess looked at Yi Xian and said seriously, come to my army, I will protect you in the future. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. I promised old man Ji. I am now a student of Tsanglan Academy. I have to keep my word. The 9th princess nodded, not saying anything else. If Yi Xian agreed so decisively, she would be unwilling. A person must have strength, but he must also have a good character. Yi Xian turned to look outside the cave. When do we enter the sword master's cave abode? The 9th princess said, tomorrow. Tomorrow is the deadline, those who should be here will be here. Yi Xian took a look at the ninth princess. You are very strong. The ninth princess said indifferently, that is because you have not seen more monsters and geniuses. The state of Jiang is very small, Qingzhou is very big. After tomorrow, you will find that there are many outstanding people in this world. This is nothing, the most terrifying thing is that those outstanding people are very hard-working. Yi Xian sat in front of the ninth princess. You and Miss An are both outstanding. The ninth princess tore a chicken leg and threw it to Yi Xian. Although Shaoan was born in the state of Jiang, her background is not ordinary. It will be very stressful to be friends with her, and if you have other ideas, the pressure will be even greater than the sky. Yi Xian nodded. I will work hard to become stronger. The corner of the ninth princess' mouth lifted slightly. I like your temperament. After saying that, she lay on the side of the mountain wall. Sleep after eating. Tomorrow we will enter the mountain to kill people. Yi Xian, the night passed. At dawn the next day, Yi Xian and the ninth princess left the cave and went straight to the depths of the mountain. The two of them arrived in front of a large mountain. Halfway up the mountain, there was a huge cave entrance. Around the cave entrance, there was actually a sword light snaking around. That is the entrance? Yi Xian asked. The ninth princess nodded. The big shots above forcibly broke an entrance. It is said that when they broke this entrance, 2 Nether Passage realm experts died. Therefore, when we enter later, besides being careful of the people, we have to be more careful of the unknown existences inside. Yi Xian nodded. Understood. The two quickened their pace, but at this moment, a man in black suddenly flashed past them at an extremely fast speed. Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat. This person's speed was not much slower than Mo Yinqi's. Indeed, no one who came here was simple. When the man passed by the two, he suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian and the ninth princess, sneered, and then made a throat-slitting gesture. Yi Xian, the man in black did not stop, but instead sped up and disappeared into the distance. Yi Xian was about to speak. Ah! At this moment, a shrill scream suddenly sounded in the distance, and in the blink of an eye, a bloody head rolled in front of the ninth princess and Yi Xian. Yi Xian was struck dumb at the sight of the head. Because this bloody head belonged to the black-robed man from before. It was gone just like that. Next to Yi Xian, the ninth princess said calmly, this kind of person is obviously a first-timer. In the outside world, if you are not particularly powerful, like Shaoan, it is best to keep a low profile. Yi Xian nodded seriously. I will keep a low profile. The ninth princess suddenly turned to look at him. What low profile? You have to keep a low profile when you need to, or others will think that you are easy to bully. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly pulled out the golden saber from her waist and slashed in the distance. Slash! A golden saber radiance flashed in the field, and a large tree over 100 feet away exploded. At the same time, a figure was sent flying over 100 feet away. The ninth princess looked at the figure in the distance coldly. Scram! The figure did not say anything, and with a shake of his body, he immediately fled. The ninth princess looked around coldly. Trash, don't come out, you are wasting my saber energy. Yi Xian, the ninth princess turned to look at Yi Xian. Let's go. The two of them continued forward, and soon, they arrived at the entrance, where a long-haired man sat. The man's hair was extremely long, even longer than a woman's, and half of the man's face was covered by his long hair. The man held a blood-red saber in his hand, and there were a few bloody heads at his feet. At this moment, the long-haired man looked up at the ninth princess and Yi Xian, and he grinned, revealing a mouth full of yellow teeth, and his smile was extremely horrifying. Apart from that, the man's appearance was also extremely ugly, as if he had been burnt by fire. The long-haired man suddenly held the long saber and lightly stomped on the ground, and said in a hoarse voice, 100 upper spiritual stones as a toll fee. The ninth princess looked at the long-haired man. It's not your fault that you are ugly, but it is your fault that you disgust me. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. Kill him. Yi Xian. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.